song to you, fair state of mine. Michigan, my Michigan, but greater song than this is thine. Michigan, my Michigan, the whisper of the forest tree, the thunder of the inland sea, unite in one grand symphony of Michigan, my Michigan. I sing a song of all the best. Michigan, my Michigan, I sing of a state with riches blessed. Michigan, my Michigan, your minds unmask a hidden store, but richer your historic lore, and great the love your builders bore. Oh, Michigan, my Michigan.
What's up, everyone? How's everyone doing?
Wealth that makes a state.
We always do national anthems here.
My Michigan, and great in things that make men great.
How is everyone feeling?
Michigan, my Michigan, our loyal voice.
I hope everyone is doing swell this afternoon. We have two huge debates to do. Shall write the name of Michigan, my Michigan. Feel free to sing if you want to. Brendan, how we feel? Jordan, how are we feeling? How we doing? We got two huge debates.
Each river makes
Michigan, my Michigan.
The whisper of the forest tree, the thunder of the inland sea, unite in one grand symphony of Michigan.
Feel free to sing this with me. If you're a Michigander, don't hold back on me. I know I got a couple on the stream. All right, next one. Okay, I've always been sort of a pacifist, but my daddy always told me that I never hit anyone in anger unless it's totally agree. Get away. Oh my God, Kay. Jimmy, what up, fam? What up? All right, next song. Next song. What are you streaming it on YouTube? It doesn't start for 10 more minutes. I got it loaded up. I'm waiting for the stream to start. And if it doesn't start like when we were watching Georgia, we'll find a way. All right, this is the Derek O'Shea Show.
Welcome to the revolution.
All right, now it's time for Pennsylvania. It's an anthem off. So make sure you get in the poll and let me know your answer is. Here's Pennsylvania's national anthem. So far, Michigan is lovely. Pennsylvania, mighty is your name. Oh, the movie Stripes? Oh, I went right over my head. Sorry. Great movie, though. On the God came, where brave men fought for freedom, tyranny he cried. This is nice. Thankful for Dave Nuts. Pennsylvania, may your future be filled with honor, everlasting as history. Pennsylvania, sing it with me. Pennsylvania, blessed by God's own hand, is in the mighty nation. Keystone of the land. Feel free to sing. If not, maybe you're just not from Pennsylvania. me the Army song. I want to change my vote. Okay. Maybe we'll do a 2.0 vote. Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, may your future be filled with honor everlasting as the history. That's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I was feeling that song. Anybody else feeling that song? Sorry to Michigan. Your election, your national anthem just wasn't doing it for me. It was a little too soft. Again, we were waiting for them to start. I have it queued up. I will do my best not to talk the entire time over the election. I'm not one of those streams. For those that are new here, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends and family. Sounds German holding up the beers and saying, yeah, I know. Pennsylvania. It was it felt kind of nice and free. I hope that was nice and free for you. I got to get my Rumble chat queued up because, of course, Rumble is just different. But how's everyone doing today? Get in the chat. Tell me how you're feeling. What are your thoughts on this election? Do you think it's going to be a good debate, or is it going to be like the Florida debate last night? That Florida debate, the audience is way too nutty for even a debate to happen, it seemed like. All right, here we go.
Derek Malone swears he isn't superstitious, but like Michael Scott from The Office, he might be.
Okay, we still have like 5 minutes. Get in the chat. Tell me. Okay, I'm gonna end this poll so everyone knows. It went 40%, 40%, 20% sucks. So we got a dead even on the thing. You know the thing. So I got both debates queued up. I got Fetterman and Oz, and we got Whitmer and Dixon. But I want to know, who do you think is going to win the first one? Got that poll going. Fetterman and Oz should be interesting. Fetterman will still need closed captioning. That's what I'm trying to figure out, what the whole thing with Fetterman and captioning, if they're going to even allow him to have that. I'm sure, Dr. Oz was forced to concede some things like that as far as like having a closed captioning device. I don't know. But at the same time, it's like, are you really going to vote for someone that has to have all that thing? What if his health gets worse? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't understand why these people, even if you like his policies, why would you want someone? You should vote against it just to prove a point of saying, you know what, you shouldn't be putting up candidates like this. It's not a good look. It's not a good look for our politics in general. Oz will win, no doubt about it. I'm excited to see. Dr. Oz might have the easiest debate of all time. If he loses, dear God. Because we show clips on this show all the time of Fetterman, and he shouldn't be running. He should have friends and family around him to tell him, hey, now's not the time, man. Maybe wait a couple years, try to get healthier or something, and then go back at it. Now's not the time. Should have bowed out. You should have brought somebody else in that can speak for him. Biden and Obama scheduled to get Pennsylvania after tonight's debate. Worried? Yeah. Pennsylvania's a huge battleground state, okay? It just is. It always been. It's just like Ohio. It's like Texas right now. I feel like Abbott's going to win, but you never know. I know what you meant. I have dyslexia, so I can read through made-up words sometimes. All right, so we have 75% chose Dixon for the first debate and Whitmer and 25% for Whitmer. Interesting. Still waiting on the debate to happen. It's apparently 3 more minutes to happen. I have this debate queued up, and I also have the Pennsylvania debate queued up for those of you new. Make sure, if you're new here, please subscribe or drop a like at least. It supports me, helps me out, makes me look cool on the inside and outside. But we are waiting for this thing to get kicked off. And as always, like the Georgia debate that kept getting taken down, if the debate gets taken down, I will find it. We will find it, even if it's some knucklehead live streaming it himself, you know. I know there's also a Kathy Hochul debate right now, but I'm not as concerned about that. Plus, I couldn't find the live stream for New York and Kathy Hochul. I don't know if they're like hiding it or it looked like you had to like pay for it. See, I have this is my backup is this guy. I don't know who this guy is, but he's my backup in case something happens. Rescue Michigan, guys.
Or just go to rumble.com and just put in the search Rescue Michigan. You'll find our stream there too. So, all right.
But we do a good job here at the stream. So get in the chat. It's going to be a good bet. It's going to be a good debate, I think. I didn't watch the last Whitmer debate. Did anybody else watch the last Whitmer debate? If so, let me know what your thoughts are on that. We are currently live on Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. So if there's something in the chat that you do not see, I'm not making it up. I'm talking to another live stream, by the way. BT dubs. I feel like I want to hear that Pennsylvania. We'll play it again. But also don't forget that Biden today said this.
Almost everyone who will die from COVID this year will not be up to date on their shots, or they will not have taken Paxlovid when they got sick. Almost everyone who will die.
It's going to be a winter of death of the unvaccinated, whatever crap he said before. Did you see MSNBC interview with a panel of Trump supporter in PA? Both sides, right and left, are putting different spins on it, of course. I did not see that. With a panel of Trump supporters? I did not see that. I did see MSNBC this morning from Morning Joe talking about basically saying that if you support Trump, you're a racist. Which is, when are we gonna? I just get so tired of it. I just want to talk about politics like we're adults, but no, we gotta play the children game.
15 people who
okay,
are over
so we're still waiting for this to happen. It's live. And again, I have backups just in case. Oh, they went off. Okay. I have it queued up. Don't worry. Those of you wondering. Please wait. Commercial break. Hopefully it'll start soon. Papa, what's good? It's going to be a winter of crippling depression and broken dreams. I know. It certainly seems. All right. I think it's starting.
Seat up for grabs, and both candidates.
Just like every winter, I know. I know. But it was. Remember Joe Biden at the Detroit Auto Show, and he said that the pandemic's over. Now today he went back on everything he said. It's all about the messaging. You want to know who liberals rely? Read what Jesus says to them at Romans 1:18-32. What did Paul say? I don't remember what Romans 1 was about. It's impossible to talk politics like adults when half of the side act like children. I know. Well, that's why I hope. Hopefully, this stream will be that. You know. Oh my gosh.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Stokes, and welcome to this live statewide debate from Oakland University at the Oakland Center, the beautiful campus of Oakland University. It's an absolute pleasure having all of you join us. Candidates, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. We know how busy your campaign schedules are, especially just a few days before it's time for people to cast those ballots. I'm also joined this evening and pleased to be joined by two of my favorite journalists, also part of our Scripps Media TV operation here in the state of Michigan. Elle and Doug, please introduce yourselves.
Hello, Michigan. I'm Elle Myers with WSYM, Fox 47 in Lansing.
And I'm Doug Reardon with Fox 17 in Grand Rapids, and as Chuck said, thank you both for being here.
All right, our worst enemy tonight is probably the tick-tock on the clock, so we're going to move as quickly as we can. We have some ground rules that we'll go over with so you understand.
It's in an hour.
Candidates have
Fetterman and Oz is in an hour. It will be on the same
statements
stream. I will switch over when it happens. I got it queued up.
Closing statements
Do not worry.
were negotiated in a virtual draw a few days ago. The candidates will have 60 seconds to respond to questions.
I think I knew you were talking about Dr. Jeff.
They then
Junior
will
Jeff.
have 30-second rebuttals, each one of them, to the question. At that point,
Andre
we
Corbell,
will
what's
move
up?
on. Elle, you have the very first question to Governor Whitmer.
Thanks, Junior Jeff.
Governor Whitmer, it seems we have our opening statement still to do. Would you want to go ahead, please?
I'm sorry, you're absolutely right.
We're excited.
Sure.
We are. We got
Thank
that.
you. And I want to thank our moderators and, of course, thank Oakland University for hosting us tonight. I'm a proud Michigander. I've lived here my whole life, and I love this state. I was raised in a bipartisan household where we had different perspectives, but a shared set of values. And that's how I know. When we stay focused on what really matters,
you're welcome, Larry.
It's a lot easier to see we all want
Thank
the
you.
same things. Great jobs and great schools, safe roads and safe communities. As governor, I have worked across the aisle to make sure that we're building a foundation for Michiganders to thrive for generations. Let me tell you what I got done. The biggest investment in K-12 education in Michigan history, tripling literacy coaches, expanding tutors so we can get our kids back on track. 170,000 people in our state are now on a tuition-free path to higher education and skills so they can get better paying jobs. We've secured the future of the auto industry is going to be built in Michigan. We've expanded jobs in life sciences, and we're bringing supply chains home and building chips here in Michigan. That is the future of our economy, and I am fighting like hell to make sure women can make their own decisions about their bodies. Tonight, I think you'll hear a lot of divisive rhetoric and misinformation and focus on the past from my opponent. I'll try to stay focused on our shared future. I know that we have real opportunity in front of us, but the big question is this: are we going to go backwards, or are we going to drive together to the future? I say, let's step on the accelerator.
Thank you, Governor. Mrs. Dixon, now your opening statement.
Good evening and thank you. I'm excited to be here tonight. And for those of you who don't know me, I want to introduce myself. I'm a mom of 4 girls. I'm a wife. I'm a cancer survivor, and I'm a worker. I spent many years on the shop floor of a steel foundry. And as a mom, I understand what it's like to have kids locked out of school and try to get them back on track. I also know what it's like to want safe communities where our kids can go out and ride their bikes. I know this because I want the same things for my own children. I'm running for governor because Gretchen Whitmer has taken us on the wrong track. She's pushed a radical, progressive, social agenda, and she hasn't listened to the problems you have every single day. Radical agendas lead to dangerous things to happen in the state. We've lost 82,000 jobs. We see our reading scores have plummeted. Our graduation rates have dropped. Our cities are less safe, and the roads aren't fixed. Misplaced priorities, broken promises, and no plan. That's what my opponent has to offer. But tonight, you have another opportunity. We can make a change. In 14 days, you can change course. In 14 days, you can put Michigan back on the right track. I've traveled the state, and from day one, I've been focused on my family-friendly plan for Michigan. Tonight, I'll share that plan, and I hope to earn your vote on November 8th.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixon. Now we'll get to the questions. Elle, your first question to Governor Whitmer.
All right. So it seems there are some lingering questions about Proposal 3. If it passes in just a few weeks, how will you legislate if portions of that proposal have to work their way through the courts?
Well, let me start with this. Proposal 3 is absolutely necessary to preserve the rights we've had for 49 years under Roe v. Wade. When the Supreme Court decided to upend it and overrule Roe, Michigan was poised to revert back to a 1931 law that makes abortion a felony. No exceptions for rape or incest, throwing doctors and nurses in jail. The only reason it's not in effect right now is because of my lawsuit. We have an opportunity to enshrine Roe into law by supporting ballot initiative 3. Now, the other side will say all sorts of wild-eyed things that are not true. Parental rights and consent will still be effective. We know that regulations will still be in effect. The simple truth is the way to protect women and ensure that future generations have the same rights we've had for 49 years is by adopting Proposal 3, and I will be a yes vote.
Mrs. Dixon?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we're not being honest about what Proposal 3 is. The governor has just been dishonest with you in her very first answer. We know that Proposal 3 does remove parental consent. It also makes it so that you don't have to be a doctor to perform an abortion. But it does align with her agenda. Her past, she's voted against a ban on partial birth abortion. And Proposal 3 allows abortion up to the moment of birth for any reason, including sex selection. There will be no legislating around Proposal 3 because it will be language in the Constitution. So we can't put those protections that we've had in place back in place, that we've had in place for all of these years. So when Governor Whitmer tells you that this is going to be Roe, it's not even close to Roe. It's not codifying Roe in our Constitution.
You guys are killing me in the chat, by the way.
But it would be the most radical abortion law in the entire country. The only place that has something similar are China and North Korea.
Governor Whitmer, you have 30 seconds to rebut if you'd like to.
Absolutely. None of what she just said is true. And here's why you can't trust anything she's saying when it comes to reproductive rights. She's the one that said a 14-year-old child raped by her uncle is a perfect example of someone who should not have reproductive rights and the ability to choose. She went further to say it is healing for a person who's raped to carry that child to term. I couldn't disagree more, and she's proven you cannot trust her on this issue. You want to protect Roe v. Wade rights? Vote yes on 3.
Thank you, Governor. Mrs. Dixon, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
The people will decide what they want to do on abortion rights in the state of Michigan. Abortion rights will be decided by Proposal 3, or it will be decided by a judge. We already know that that's the case in the state of Michigan. The governor has the most radical opinion of abortion. She was asked twice in the last debate if she had any limits on abortion. She refused to answer because she has no limits on abortion. So when she calls me extreme, the truth is that there's no more extreme position than Governor Whitmer's on abortion.
All right.
Doug, your question to Ms. Dixon.
Let's stick with abortion. It's, of course, a very potent issue right now, and you'll appear on the ballot right next to it. Very simple question. We danced around it just a moment ago in both of your answers, but I want to know, in your case, Mrs. Dixon, if Proposal 3 passes or any of these court battles work out in the favor of the governor or any of these groups seeking to codify abortion rights in Michigan, will you accept that as the will of the people?
Absolutely. I've said that from the very beginning. There are no laws that I say I think that I'm more powerful than that. I know the governor has gone around laws before and in fact gone around the Constitution and doesn't believe that the governor is beholden to law or Constitution. But I do not feel that way. Absolutely. If this is what the people want, then I will enforce that.
And of course, conversely, if Proposal 3 fails, if any of these lawsuits don't work out in the favor of yourself or any of these groups seeking, again, to codify abortion rights, will you accept that as the will of the people, Governor?
I will always accept the will of the people. I think you're asking a really interesting question, though. When you say, will you accept the will of the people, I think that is a question that should be posed to Mrs. Dixon. She refuses to accept the outcome of the last election. She has not yet said she will accept the outcome of the next election. So when she says she will accept the will of the people, she is an election denier and ever
So
has
boring.
said that Joe Biden actually won this last election. Now let's go back to
Election
abortion
denier
rights.
drink.
First of all, this isn't about me. This is about all the women and girls in our state. This is about the ability to have bodily autonomy, be treated as a full American citizen. Mrs. Dixon will tell you here that she'll abide by whatever happens with regard to ballot initiative 3. Behind closed doors, she tells her radical special interest groups she will do anything necessary to curtail abortion rights. The governor absolutely matters to this right. My lawsuit's the only reason it's not in effect right now. Will she sign laws abridging that right?
Thank you, Governor. Ms. Dixon, I'd like to give you your 30 seconds, of course, to rebut, but just one thing to throw in. You said you don't support criminalizing abortion. That's exactly what this 1931 law in the books does. So in your rebuttal, I would also like to know if you would make any changes to that.
He went to a concert the last
I would
night
like
or
to
something.
comment on Gretchen Whitmer and her demeanor tonight, coming after me, calling me an election denier. We know that this is going to be the way the evening goes. But I'm wondering when she will say that she can't run with Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist anymore, because I would believe that he is also an election denier, since he came out in 2017 and asked for a recount. In fact, he said that the election system in Detroit was, I think the quote is, in complete chaos. So I'm wondering if she's going to say that she can no longer run with an election denier.
Thank you for that. 30 seconds to you, Governor.
That's silly. I'm going to stay focused on fighting to make sure that women in the state still have the ability to make our own decisions about our bodies and our futures. Let's be very clear. The right to have reproductive choice is important for women of all ages from all walks of life. We know that women who go through IVF have to sometimes have selective reduction to increase the odds that they take a baby to term. We know that women who have a partial abortion, partial miscarriage, need an abortion. This will impact us all.
Thank you, Governor. Chuck has your next question.
Thank you. Candidates, we asked over the last week or so Michiganders to send in questions that they would like to ask you themselves. They can't be here, so we're going to be their surrogate, so to speak. Inflation is something that is very much on the mind of Michiganders. Governor, I'll begin with you. This is a question from Mason Spence. The viewer said, with high levels of inflation hurting our pocketbooks, what step would you take with state legislators?
I am going to have Dr. Oz Fetterman when it starts.
For Michiganders.
It's not starting
and
for
I
an
wanna add
hour.
to that, is this a sign from an average citizen that the Whitmer Biden economic plan has failed?
So let's talk about inflation. We know that there is global inflation. It is not unique to Michigan. It is not unique to the United States. A governor cannot fix global inflation, but what I can do is put more money in your pockets, and that's exactly what we've done. Working in a bipartisan way with a Republican legislature, we were able to help 150,000 families get free or low-cost daycare, money in the pocket. We were able to expand opportunities to have the state pick up a third of the cost of daycare for working families. And we also have put 170,000 Michiganders on the path to tuition-free skills. That's how we keep money in the pocket. I put our fiscal house in order by paying down debt, and we've gotten our credit rating upgraded, and that's how we can eliminate the retirement tax, triple the earned income tax credit, and pause the sales tax on gas. All proposals I've made that are sitting in front of the legislature.
Mrs. Dixon, it's easy to criticize and point fingers when you're not in power. If you had been in power when all of the things that have happened over the last 4 years have happened, what decisions would you have made that would have helped change what is going on with our economy? And if elected by the people, what is your specific plan to make the economy better?
Well, I've heard several times from Gretchen Whitmer that she'll work with anyone on anything and that she's bipartisan, but she's actually vetoed quite a bit of opportunity to put money back into the pockets of the people. She vetoed a child tax credit. She vetoed 2 opportunities to reduce the income tax. She also vetoed retirement help for retirement income. So when she's had the opportunity to actually do that, she's vetoed it. In fact, even a gas tax holiday came to her and she vetoed that. But we know that part of her policy was to raise the gas tax by 45 cents per gallon. So you'd be paying $5 a gallon for gas right now. This governor has not done anything to help inflation, but I would put money back in your pockets. I would make sure we have that child tax credit. I would make sure that we reduce the income tax, and I would make sure that our seniors who are on a fixed income are not receiving more taxes than they should, and we can put more money back in their pockets.
Governor?
So listen, we'd never raised the gas tax, number one. In fact, we have cut taxes. Number 2, the bills Mrs. Dixon refers to were a gimmick. Republicans in Lansing wanted to tell you that they were cutting your taxes, but they didn't even take effect until spring of next year. I don't have time for games, and I don't think you do either. What I would like to know is how Mrs. Dixon plans to balance a budget giving $12 billion away and not shifting costs onto you. That's where I would be most concerned as we think about the cost shift onto people.
Thank you, Governor. Mrs. Dixon.
She can work with anybody, but now the bills from Republicans are a gimmick. In fact, I think she's been on the House floor twice, so maybe she should have gone and tried to negotiate so that she could actually get some of those tax cuts. And I love how she says, just so you know, we never increased the gas tax. Yes, thanks to my lieutenant governor candidate who made sure we did not increase the gas tax. But even though in 2018 she stood on the debate floor and said it was nonsense and ridiculous, the idea of her raising the gas tax to pay for roads, it was one of the first things that she tried to do when she was in office.
Your
David.
All right, so switching gears a little bit here, people across the state have seen a significant spike in energy costs. Just in the last couple of weeks, our viewers in
hoping it
Lansing
gets
with
a little
BWL
fiery.
saw a significant increase. So I'm curious, how will you help Michiganders afford utilities this winter? And is there a change in the future of energy? Mrs. Dixon, we'll start with you.
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to talk about Line 5 because we know that there's a lawsuit out right now that Gretchen Whitmer would like to shut down Line 5 in the state of Michigan. That would be catastrophic and raise our energy costs. In a time when exactly what you're saying, we have people that are having trouble heating their homes. And we know that Line 5 provides 65% of the propane in the Upper Peninsula, 55% in the Lower Peninsula, and the jet fuel for the Detroit airport. It's very crucial that we do everything we can to lower costs. Another way to lower energy would have been to pass a gas tax holiday so that people don't have to pay as much on their gas bill when they fill up their car. We need to make sure we do everything possible in the state of Michigan to lower the cost of energy for our people.
Governor Whitmer?
First, let me clarify. There has been no change in Line 5. No change. In fact, the tunnel continues to move forward. All of the permits have been executed, and it's sitting in front of the MPSC and the federal government. I think that's important.
Oh, God. Charlie,
Secondly,
I allow people to have a
that
voice,
costs have gone up
regardless of how
on
offended
everything.
you are.
And that's why building out energy alternatives is really important, to giving you alternatives to help bringing down the cost of energy. And
You
that's
can
why
find something
we've
else to
really
watch.
diversified and are continuing to do work in our portfolio. More wind, more solar. Right now, Michigan has the number one state for clean energy jobs in the country, because we are focused on building out alternatives, ensuring our energy independence, protecting you from spikes, and protecting our Great Lakes. It's not one or the other. We must do all of it.
Mrs. Dixon, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
We have to be really careful that we don't kneecap our economy with a radical energy agenda. And Line 5 has not been shut down, but that's not because Gretchen Whitmer hasn't tried. In fact, even Joe Biden came out and said, you can't really shut this down. In fact, Justin Trudeau, who I would say is the most radical environmentalist in the entire world, came out and invoked a 1977 treaty telling Gretchen Whitmer she could not shut down Line 5. So the only reason it's not shut down is because other people have stopped her radical energy agenda.
Governor?
Mrs. Dixon wants to do things the way they've always been done, with a look to the past. I want to build lightnings. I want to make sure that we are expanding our energy alternatives in clean energy and being good stewards of our water. We know that climate change is already having a huge impact, whether it's the tornado in Gaylord or the flooding in Midland. I showed up, I helped people get through it, but we need to build out
trying to
clean
find out if
energy
this channel is
alternatives
safe for
and
you
be
or
a
something.
driving force in the
If
transition
you're worried
in our
about
autos.
safety, do not watch me.
Thank you both.
So shortly after we announced this debate, I heard from one of our viewers in Norton Shores. His name is Greg Tierman, and he had a question about the retirement tax, which, of course, I think a lot of people do. Greg gets his income from an IRA and a 401k that he and his employers contributed to over the years. Governor, entering your first term, you promised to repeal the retirement tax. So, of course, Greg wants to know if you still plan to do that with a potential second term. But he takes it farther. He says that your plan repeals only pensions. Your proposed repeal would cover only pensions. But again, Greg gets his retirement from a 401k. So would it cover all retirees? Would that tax break cover all retirees? What can we tell Greg?
So, Greg, when I was in the legislature, the Republican governor and Republican legislature pushed through the retirement tax. They started taxing people who worked for a living, played by the rules, set aside money, and now are living on fixed incomes. And I said it was wrong then, and it is still wrong. I am trying to repeal the retirement tax. The thing standing in my way is the Republican legislature in Lansing. I have done a lot of work with them, but they are standing in the way of us repealing this. I want to give you relief. You played by the rules. You should be able to reap the rewards of the work that you did over a lifetime and not have this new tax when you're on fixed incomes. So absolutely, I have tried to get the retirement tax repealed, a Republican legislature standing in the way. With a second term and a new legislature, I'm hopeful we can finally get
Charlie,
it done.
I think you forget that
Ms. Dixon, if
it's
you're
not just a
elected, what's your
woman.
plan for the retirement
There's more
tax?
than that.
Well, Greg, first of all, I want to note that your question, your exact question about increasing the exemption for retirement income, that actually did go to the governor's desk, and that was another one of her line item vetoes. She had the opportunity to reduce that. She did stand on the debate stage in 2018 and say that that was one of her top priorities, was to eliminate the retirement tax. But as you noted, that would be for public pensions, not all retirees. So I do want you to be assured that
I'm glad you're here, though, Charlie.
Important that we make sure that money
like
goes back into the
different
pockets
voices.
of all retirees in the state of Michigan, especially as we head into a recession. We're already seeing this massive inflation because of the Biden-Whitmer policies. The recession is right at our doorstep, and I want to make sure that we get as much money back to our retirees as possible.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Dixon. And before you rebut, Governor, I will remind you that in your second term, you very well could have a GOP legislature.
You know, I think we'll have a much more reasonable legislature because we just went through redistricting. And I'm hopeful that we will actually get legislators who are representative of the people they serve. But I think it's important to ask a question. Mrs. Dixon has said she will eliminate the retirement tax. How is she going to balance the budget? She has said that she will cut income tax. That's $12 billion out of the budget. How is she going to balance that? She's toyed with a sales tax. Is she
Charlie, I just hope you're consistent with the abortion thing, as long as you're okay with a man's right to choose whether to support having a baby or not.
I've talked about repealing the income tax over time, a responsible reduction of the income tax and removing it over an 8 to 10 year period. This is not a radical concept. We have 9 states in the nation that already have no income tax. In fact, not only do they have no income tax, but they are thriving economically. And as you bring more people into the state, you have more revenue as a state. If we could look to the future and balance our budget better, the governor has already put an additional almost $20 billion into the budget in the 4 years that she's been there.
Dixon. Thank you for that answer.
All right, thank you very much. We have a couple more questions here on another important topic, education, which everyone says that they're very concerned with. This particular question comes from Anna
Snippets,
Wolf.
I'm sorry.
She's in Madison Heights. She wants to know, what will you do to help improve the public schools in Michigan? Also, Ellie Rakenstein of Bloomfield Hills, along the same vein, says, how will you as governor change the education system in the state and keep oversight over the state superintendent and the Michigan Department of Education? If you talk with many of the organizations that are concerned about education, Business Leaders for Michigan and others, they will tell you that we are not a top 10 state yet, and that is one of our goals. We just recently saw that for 4th and 8th grade, that the test scores for reading and math have plunged. How will you make us a top 10 state?
As you noted, we are not a top 10 state. We're not even close. We're actually a bottom 10 state right now. We just got our test scores back for 4th and 8th graders, and we
Michigan's
are
a bottom.
really doing horribly in reading and math for 4th and 8th graders. This is something that has been a pillar of my campaign, to bring education back in the state of Michigan. Not only do we want to make sure that parents are involved in education, but we want to make sure that our kids are back on track from the pandemic. Most states that had schools out as long as Michigan, which there are very few, so close to as long as the state of Michigan had students out of school, have had comprehensive tutoring programs go into their schools. The governor has talked about literacy coaches going into our schools. I haven't found any schools that have literacy coaches yet, but I want to have a comprehensive 25-hour tutoring program for every student across the state to make sure that they get back on track from the years of online learning that they endured under this governor's policies.
All right. Governor, you've been in office for 4 years now. Harry Truman said the buck stops at your desk. You've had 4 years to try to fix education in this state. Why is it not where you would want it to go at least 4 years ago where you said you wanted to go?
We've also had some historic challenges over the last few years, I think, to put it lightly. You know, Mrs. Dixon says that I kept students out longer than any other state. That's just not true. I worked closely with my Republican and Democratic governors, and kids were out for 3 months. The fact of the matter is, education is what levels the playing field for people, and we've underinvested in it for decades. We got the biggest investment in public education done in a bipartisan way to support teachers, to bring down class sizes, to wrap our kids with supports like mental health supports, tutors, and literacy coaches, making class sizes smaller. This is how we improve outcomes. But it's only been a couple years.
She was like notoriously known for her strict lockdowns, but sure.
The reason kids were out of school during the pandemic was because we were working off of knowledge in 1918, when kids died in the last global pandemic.
Dang, man,
As a
you got
mom,
high standards.
all I was thinking about was saving the lives of our kids.
Ms. Dixon, you have a rebuttal?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just heard an audible gasp around town when
was
Gretchen
from me.
Whitmer said that kids were out of school for 3 months.
Here we go.
Perhaps she wasn't paying attention to what was actually happening. We even had schools that were closed this year. This is shocking to me that she thinks that schools were only closed for 3 months, or maybe she thinks she can convince you that schools were only closed for 3 months, but you know better because your students are the ones that are desperately behind. And the test scores show that she's being dishonest
thank you so much on
about
Rumble.
this. She's being dishonest about even trying to get into these schools to get these schools back on track.
Governor.
Well, that's just not true. But what I will say is we have made a historic investment, and that's precisely how we laid the groundwork to get to Michigan being a top 10 state for literacy. That is the goal that we all have to get behind. The problem is, if Mrs. Dixon is elected, she and her biggest funder, Betsy DeVos, will be writing the education budget. And their plan is to take $500 million out of our public school system. You want to get kids to top 10 literacy, draining the school aid fund of resources is not going to get us there.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Chuck. So, candidates, we continue to see violence in our schools. Just this week, the alleged
Historic
shooter
drink.
pled guilty. And we've heard talk of hardening our schools. So what does that mean to you, and can you describe what it will look like in practice? Governor Whitmer, we'll start with you.
Well, listen, I got to tell you, as a former prosecutor who ran exercises with our police departments for active shooter, it's horrible to see what happened in Oxford and what plays out in this country every single day.
Exactly, B-Rad.
As a mom, I am furious that in this country, and only this country, guns are the #1 killer of our children. I support secure storage. I support red flag laws. I support background checks. When Mrs. Dixon was asked,
There's
"Do you
background
support
checks.
secure
It's already a
storage,"
thing.
which was what
Drink.
Oxford families were asking for, she said, "I don't know what it is." She supports more guns in schools, making them not gun.
Who are these people,
zones.
John? This is Federer
Her
woman
plans
and
are downright dangerous.
Oz woman.
In the same month that the Oxford shooting happened, she posted a picture of herself with a gun and the caption saying, "Gun control means using both hands." She might think this is a joke, but I think there's nothing funny about it.
Thank you, Governor. Mrs. Dixon.
How manipulative to comment on a post that I made 29 days before the shooting even occurred, but that's what we expect when we talk to Gretchen Whitmer, right? Let me be clear about something.
on this,
What's
Biden.
happening in our schools when we have a school shooting is devastating. I have 4 daughters that are in school-age daughters that I am concerned about every single day. Our state police came out with a safe schools plan in 2018 to harden our schools. You asked what that looks like. I would like to have armed security at our schools. I would like to make sure that we have a one entry point. I would also like to implement some of that plan that talks about how to identify a child that struggles with mental health, that might be considering self-harm or harming someone else. This is something that we just heard the Department of Ed say that they wouldn't even tell parents about, and Gretchen Whitmer has been silent. We need an Office of Safe Schools, like states like Florida have, to make sure that this is a top priority. And if we had implemented the 2018 report from the state police, we might have saved lives.
Governor?
There was a school shooting in Missouri yesterday in a district that had exactly what she just described. One place of entry, armed guards in the school district, and people are dead. We've been trying that for 30 years. It's not working. It is time to try proven policies, background checks, secure storage, red flag laws. I'm not talking about hunting. I'm just trying to keep our kids and communities safe. Ask yourself, who's going to keep your kids safe? The former prosecutor with plans or the candidate with thoughts and prayers?
Mrs. Dixon?
And yet she's been governor for 4 years. In fact, she's been a career politician for 20, and she hasn't seemed to come up with an answer for this yet. Her concern is taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. I want to make sure that our kids are safe. I don't want our kids in a sitting duck zone where the only person that has a weapon is the shooter that is going in to take their lives. I want to make sure we are as safe as possible in the state of Michigan. And as a mom, I think you can rely on me to make sure it happens.
Thank you both. Doug?
All right, let's talk about libraries, if we could, school and
Mom
public.
card.
We've had a lot of efforts across the state, across the nation for that matter, to ban access to certain books, again, at public and school libraries.
Oh, here we go.
Having to do with titles, including...
Yeah, we should have porn in our
Holocaust,
schools.
As governor, how do you make sure that kids have access to that inclusive literature who might be seeking it, while also making sure that parents and teachers feel heard on the issue? And I'll add that this has real life implications. We've had millages fail, and in my hometown of Grand Rapids, we've had libraries say that they are in danger of closing because people are voting against millages based on these issues. So again, I would ask you, Mrs. Dixon, what do you do as governor? How do you handle this?
Yeah, what I've heard from parents across the state is inappropriate content in school libraries. That's the biggest concern that I'm hearing about. And we're talking about sexual content. We're talking about pornography in schools. Parents have risen up across the state. They've asked Gretchen Whitmer to comment, and she's been silent on this issue. So I'm anxious to hear what she has to say. If you have material in your school that is something that you can't read to a child at a bus stop because you would be arrested because it is pornographic, then it should not be in our classrooms. What these parents are talking about are not textbooks that will help children learn about themselves. These are books that are describing to children how to have sex, and parents are outraged about it across the state. I stand with those parents that want to make sure we go back to the basics of reading, writing, and math in our schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Dixon. Governor?
Yeah,
How dare you.
Let me start with this. As a public school parent, I know that we have rights to understand the curriculum, the materials, to opt our children out if we think that it doesn't keep in line with our desires in terms of what they are learning. Also, parents can attend parent-teacher conferences, take part in the debate that is happening, and these are happening at the local level, where they should be, so that parents can be involved.
Okay.
We
Thanks,
also
Pass for
have
fun.
a duty to make sure that all
Goodbye.
children feel accepted and safe and can learn and play when they are in school. I reject the false choice that it has to be one or the other. But I'll also tell you this, is with a really heavy heart that I
Where's
see
Batman?
politicians
I blocked him.
try to wedge
Past 36.
communities against one another. It is dangerous and it is selfish. Mrs. Dixon hosted someone on her show that said Martin Luther King Jr. shouldn't be in our history books. This is what we're talking about. We need to bring down the temperature and solve the problems to make sure parents are involved and students feel comfortable, and we're giving them a robust education.
Jeez.
30 seconds, Mrs. Dixon.
Well, I guess we've received the answer now that she is not going to stand with parents on this issue who are crying out across the state. In fact, I had a gentleman come up to me just a few nights ago, and he said, I found content in my school library describing how to have sex to my son. I went to the Democrats, and I said, I cannot believe that this is in there. And they said, you are no longer a part of our party. He said, just a few weeks ago, not only was I a Democrat, but I was running for office as a Democrat. He said, because Democrats won't stand up for our children and go back to the basics, I'm leaving the Democrat Party.
Governor?
Do you really think books are more dangerous than guns?
Oh, jeez.
Like, do you really think that books pose a greater danger to our kids than gun violence does? Mrs. Dixon is trying to distract us.
She's right.
She's
we need
trying
to have
divert attention
Mein
from the
Kampf
fact that
on all the
she's
shelves in the
anchored by
library,
Betsy DeVos.
along with
She has
Playboy,
endorsed Betsy DeVos's
because we need to be
plan
teaching
drain
them sex.
$500 million
Kindergarten,
out of our
pre-K.
public schools, and that's why she's waging
First grade
these
isn't
fights.
soon enough.
We have to protect our kids.
Chuck?
Governor, 4 years ago, you won election mainly because of a phrase that you used that said,
Oh, my God.
fix the damn roads. We know that there's construction
Oh,
going on.
Charlie,
because
you're the
everywhere we
best.
go,
Thank you
we
for
see
being
orange
here.
sparrows. My question is, are we building better roads, or are we just putting Band-Aids on a cancerous
Mr.
infrastructure?
Troutwinner, probably.
Well, you know, I love talking about the roads. The reason I focus on the roads is because when you have a busted rim, it can be money out of rent. It can be money out of childcare. And that's why fixing the damn roads has been so important. Let's be clear. We are addressing decades of disinvestment. We've already rebuilt 13,000 lane miles, 900 bridges. There are orange cones and barrels all over the state because we are fixing the roads. The fact of the matter is, this is a huge issue for our economy, our personal safety. It is so crucial that we
How
continue
simple
this
my
work.
audience is.
But it's all in jeopardy. As we think about what's Michigan going to look like 4,
Yes,
8,
you're the
12 years down
sophisticated
the
one
road,
here, Charlie.
We have to have solid infrastructure. But with plans to cut $12 billion out of the general fund and no plan to replace it, that will set us back in terms of rebuilding infrastructure back to decades of disinvestment. It'll mean money out of public safety and out of our kids' education. We can't afford to have that kind of leadership.
Governor, really very quick follow-up. Yes or no? Are we using better materials?
We are. We're using the right mix and materials. And as you can see, when you're driving by, we're taking the roads all the way down to gravel and rebuilding them. They're built to last. It's not just papering over like, unfortunately, has been done for years in the state prior to me taking office.
All right. Mrs. Dixon, if elected the next governor of this state, will you continue what we see going on with the construction of our roads, or will you change the process in any way, shape, or form?
We will work to make sure that there actually is a plan for the roads. She stood on the debate stage 4 years ago and said she had a plan, but let's remember, there was no plan. The plan was to raise the gas tax by 45 cents a gallon, and you would be paying $5 a gallon for gas right now. That obviously didn't work. And then when she was given road funding by the legislature because she didn't get her gas tax increase, she vetoed it. She had a lot of vetoes at that time, also vetoed autism funding for families. This was a tantrum because she didn't get her road funding. We want to make
Exactly,
sure that
BB.
it is
There
a
you go.
priority. And think about this.
Spending
If it were a
$10K on
priority
smart
back
boards.
then when she stood on this debate stage, in the 4 years that the budget increased by nearly $20 billion, you would have thought that she would be able to find road funding in that time to actually fix the roads instead of just throwing a bunch of orange barrels out before the next election.
Governor, your rebuttal.
So listen, I'm not even going to.
So that's not simply not true.
This. We are going to continue to fix the dam roads, rebuilding the state.
Oh, she said
What's up
dam.
next
Oh my
is
God.
Miller Road Bridge. What's up next is Mound Road, 696, 275. These are important arteries in this part of the state that you will see work being done. We need to continue this. It doesn't end. Unfortunately, we have to continue to rebuild infrastructure, but we're making headway, and we got to put our foot
Dixon
on the
roads
gas.
will be racist.
People are wondering when the road from their house to work will be fixed. When will that be a priority? Because it's absolutely true that a broken rim is devastating. I know because I had one this year. In fact, I've had 5 flat tires on these roads. They are a total disaster. And they're costing the people of Michigan $5,000 a year in road repairs. So if this is how she fixes the roads, well, I guess we can look back at her other promises too. What were they? Transparency, clean water, fixing the roads? Failures.
All right, in this same infrastructure vein, starting with you, Mrs. Dixon, I'm curious, how will you improve internet infrastructure and access, especially up in the UP? I hope to hear a concrete plan.
Yeah, it's critical for us to work with our private sector to expand these projects across the state of Michigan. And in fact, once we do that, we will see the economic development that we so desperately need. Right now, not only are our children suffering because we don't have broadband, especially during a time when they were kept at home for online learning, which is why so many of our kids are so far behind, but even our farmers are suffering because they don't have access to broadband. So I will partner with our broadband companies and talk to them about how they can expand. In fact, one of the great things about the tunnel that will be built for Line 5 is that we can also run broadband access through that tunnel and make sure that we can expand our access into the Upper Peninsula.
Fetterman and Oz will be
will make sure to
in
take
20
advantage
minutes.
of that tunnel that will be gifted to the state of Michigan.
Governor?
I got to tell you, I am so grateful that the Chamber of Commerce for Northern Michigan has endorsed my candidacy. This is because we've been working closely to make sure that we created an Office of Rural Development. We created an office specifically about increasing broadband access. 23,000 homes have already been added online. Now, what we can't afford is someone who's going to take political pot shots instead of roll up their sleeves and solve problems. When the Infrastructure and Jobs Act passed, Mrs. Dixon called it fake. She snubbed her nose at it because she doesn't like the guy in the White House. We need a governor who's not going to score political points, but
hopefully
roll up
the
their
Fetterman and
sleeves
Oz
and get
debate is
things done.
more fiery.
$10 billion.
And hopefully it's not the cringiest thing I've ever watched in my life.
We are going to deploy those resources to make sure that we get everyone connected. We're making progress, and there's more good work to do, but we got to continue the work and not play political games. I will fight for every dime to come into the state of Michigan so I can make your life better.
Mrs. Dixon?
You should be careful of where all of your dimes go
Mr. Tubbs,
if Gretchen
what's up?
Whitmer is in charge, because she just offered $715 million of your taxpayer dollars to a Chinese corporation to come to the state of Michigan. So she can tell you all she wants that she is improving economic development and keeping automotive jobs here. But we're hearing that battery plants are going outside of Michigan unless they're owned by the Chinese and have strong ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Your taxpayer dollars are not safe with Gretchen Whitmer.
Governor?
There was a lot to take in on that one. I'll say this. We are making historic progress when it comes to economic
Just like
development.
I ignore everything she
Whether
said.
it's Goshen that is changing big rapids and building long-range batteries, or our next energy, or Magna that we announced today. Mrs. Dixon has worked against economic development incentives that I worked in a bipartisan way to get done. If she was governor, none of those projects would be happening. We cannot unilaterally disarm and think we're going to build an economy of the future. We have to run fast and win.
Thank you both. Doug?
You know, we got another question that we got quite a bit of submissions on was on no-fault auto insurance. People like Maureen Howell,
We got no-fault auto insurance.
Crash wanted to know what exactly would be done to help these 18,000 survivors, Governor. Of course, you know, those benefits were taken away during your administration. So how do we provide access to care for these folks?
So let me start with this. Michigan has had historically the highest insurance rates in the country. I worked with the Republicans in the legislature to give Michigan residents some choices, give consumers the ability to pick what level of insurance they want, like happens in other states. Now, people can make that choice, and we've seen rates come down, and we also know that this has helped drivers drive insured, where people weren't buying the insurance previously. There also is a group of people who have been injured, especially those pre this law, who we need to ensure get the care they contracted for at the rate so that they can actually get those services. There's been a lawsuit. We know that this case is still in front of the court, but I've been trying to reach out to the legislature to help make sure that we address those rates and ensure that rates are being paid on time.
And Mrs. Dixon, if you are elected, these folks would be looking to you for this help. What would you do?
I agree that we had insurance rates that were way too high, and that we had people in Detroit
people in
that
Michigan are
couldn't even
freaking out
get
about
insurance
insurance
for their
rates?
car, and they were paying thousands of dollars just to drive every month. That was devastating. Sometimes,
You guys, we need a word of
legislation has
the
unintended
word of
consequences.
the debate
We've seen that with this
that we'll scream
legislation.
to
In
if
fact,
if they say in the next
governor
debate.
knew that there
Get in the
was
chat.
going
Tell
to
me
be a
what the word of the
lawsuit
day
when
will
she
be.
decided to give away the
gotta be a
catastrophic
buzzword.
injury fund and give $400 checks back to everybody in Michigan, even though these people were desperate to find out how they would continue to get care. Now that the lawsuit has gone through, you're going to get a bill for $48 because she gave you those checks just a little too soon. And we have to make sure we take care of those people who had that contract to make sure their lives are the same quality as they were before.
Governor?
Mrs. Dixon is showing you how ill-prepared she is for this job. The governor doesn't decide for the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association what the checks are going to be.
New Jersey.
Mrs. Dixon?
I'm glad she admitted that because her commercials are constantly saying that she gave $400 checks back to everyone. So I'm glad she's admitting that those checks didn't come from her and she actually isn't putting money back into the pockets of the Michigan people.
Thank you both.
Okay. Mrs. Dixon, next question goes to you. I'm going to try to take this in a slightly different direction, and perhaps you might not need rebuttals on this. In the interest of civility, and certainly something that Governor Milligan, the longest serving governor of this state, talked about, I want to ask you to encourage the best and the brightest to enter the field of public service, what can you say positive about your opponent
Switch into
and
Geico.
the political party that she represents?
My opponent always talks about her daughters. And as a mom of girls, I think that's so important to come out and encourage your daughters and love your daughters. She has also made sure she's fought for women, and I love that about her. I think that we can continue that tradition and make sure we take care of women and make sure women are protected in the state. It's so important.
All right. Governor, same question.
I would have said something very similar, actually. I know how hard it is to run for office and to raise kids. And so my hat's off to anyone who's willing to do it.
Toxic
I think
masculinity, that's a
moms'
good one,
voices
Charlie.
are
Thank you.
important. We obviously have very different perspectives. All moms are not the same. But I appreciate how difficult it is and applaud any woman who is willing
I'm good,
to put
Gaz.
herself
Thanks for asking,
out there,
man.
at the same time balance all of the different pressures that we working moms have.
All right. Would you like a rebuttal?
Oh my God.
I didn't think so. All right. Hale?
All right, changing gears a little bit. So we had one epidemic that was sort of eclipsed by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm curious how you'll address the opioid crisis here in Michigan. So starting with Governor
good
Whitmer,
question.
how can you address the influx of fentanyl with the ongoing opioid crisis here in our state?
Well, let me start with this. You know, I often talk about my own mother who died of brain cancer right after my first daughter was
what
born.
up?
I was in that sandwich generation where I was taking care of two different generations of my family. And I know how hard that was. And that's why I've worked so hard to expand
I got the Fetterman
access
debate
to
queued up.
healthcare. I worked with my predecessor, Rick Snyder,
here.
when I was
Boop.
Medicaid expansion done. And today, 1 million more people have health care because of that work. There is no question
in the mirror.
that we have got an opioid crisis in this country. It was a greedy pharmaceutical company that buffaloed the people of this country and has created a lot of addicts. That's why the resources that we are putting into addiction treatment, the resources that we are putting into ensuring more people have access to health care is so incredibly important. This is a space where we've got more good work to do, but we are making progress.
Mrs. Dixon?
Well, we've seen a massive increase in overdoses. 2021 was the highest number we've ever seen. And we can directly correlate this to the Whitmer-Biden policies of having an open border. We know that drugs are pouring across our border every day. We've seen overdoses rise since this administration took office. It's been devastating, and that's why I've presented my Safe State plan to put $1 billion new into policing to
subscribing,
make sure
Thomas.
we have enough police on the streets. I just went to the Oakland County Crime Lab the other day. The woman there was testing two giant blocks of cocaine, and then she pulled out one of fentanyl. I said, where did that come from? And she told me it had come from just down the street in Pontiac at a house. I asked her how many people that fentanyl could kill, and she said millions. If we had more officers on the streets, we could be preventing a lot more overdose deaths. I want to make sure that we have the backs of our cops and we invest in our cops and we make sure they have what they need to fight this horrible scourge on our country.
Governor Whitmer, if you'd like a rebuttal, I'm also curious if you'd expand things like access to Narcan or anything else to address the problem tomorrow.
Of course.
Absolutely. So I think one of the
Are you
big
against
things that
Narcan?
we haven't yet talked about but need to is about crime. We know that our police put their lives on the line every single day. I, as governor, have made too many phone calls, attended too many funerals.
Thanks, Hooligan,
and
for 4.
That's why I have
7-4.
delivered over $1 billion more for law enforcement in Michigan, to recruit, to train, to make sure they've got the wraparound support so that they can do their job. It is a hard job, but this is, I think, one of the most important things that we haven't really yet talked about.
Thank you, Governor. Mrs. Dixon, Narcan?
Narcan is obviously very important. And we have seen that we have our Walmart pharmacies that distribute it a few times a year, and it's also our police officers have it around the state. But I think it's very
Thank you,
important
Sir Larry,
to note that it's not just
for
about
subscribing.
going out and having cops on the street. It's also about taking care of our corrections
Mr.
officers
Tubbs, we would
and
die if
making
we did
sure
that.
when someone commits a crime, that we get those drug dealers off the streets and they can't commit more crimes and cause more death in the state of Michigan.
Thank you both.
So this is our last question. I have to read it very quickly. Last week, the CDC recommended adding COVID-19 vaccines to the recommended immunization schedule for both children and adults next year. Got to be very adamant about this. This is not a mandate. This was a recommendation. This happens every single year. So as governor of Michigan, do you take them up on that recommendation and make sure that the COVID-19 vaccination be required for school attendance, Mrs. Dixon?
Yeah, I want to be very clear about this. This is a parent's decision. There will never be a mandate for the COVID-19 vaccine for children to go to school in a Dixon administration. I'm anxious to hear what Gretchen Whitmer has to say.
Same.
Because she was forcing the vaccine on people. You remember her program, Vax to Normal? You could only get your liberties and freedoms back if you got your neighbor vaccinated. She will likely push this on your children. I want you to know that I will never push the COVID-19 vaccine on your children. That is your choice, and it will always be your choice as long as I am your governor.
Governor Whitmer?
No, I do not support requiring the COVID vaccine for children. But let's talk about COVID. It hit our state hard. It hit this community incredibly hard. We had hospitals that were full. We had morgues that were full. We had refrigerated trucks outside of hospitals because we didn't even have enough masks for our doctors and didn't have a place to put deceased people. We made quick decisions to save lives, and studies show we saved thousands. I am proud of that. But while I was getting death threats, saving lives during COVID, my opponent was sowing conspiracy theories. She was saying that kids couldn't get impacted, no need for masks. She even said vaccines carried the mark of the beast and government trackers. It's that kind of foolishness that actually endangers people. If she had been governor during COVID, thousands more people would have died.
Mrs. Dixon?
If that were at all true, why would I have gotten the vaccine myself? The governor is being dishonest once again, but that's what you do when you don't have policies to run on. When you killed more seniors than almost any other state. When you were told to stop the policy, but you kept it going. When you had such
she won based on that right there.
Unemployment fraud that you lost $8.5 billion worth of taxpayer money. She crushed our economy. 3,000 businesses, 3,000 restaurants died under Gretchen Whitmer and never came back. She kept our kids out of school.
Mrs. Dixon, I'm sorry, I have to keep us on time. Thank you. One more rebuttal from you, Governor.
I think you know what our priorities are. Hers would have been the bottom line. Mine were children. Mine were seniors. Mine
how about
was
an apology for what
people.
you just said?
As soon as vaccines became available, I deployed the Michigan National Guard to work with our nursing homes to make sure that if seniors wanted the vaccine, that they got it. And COVID rates plummeted. Had she been governor during that same time, thousands more nursing home residents would have passed away.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Doug. Candidates, it's now time for your closing statements. We promised you beforehand that we would reserve 90 seconds each for you all to be able to do that. According to the agreement and the draw that we had before, Governor Whitmer, you go first, and Mrs. Dixon, you get the final word.
Well, that was fast, and thank you for participating. You know, as I think about the next 4 years and our future, I can't help but think of my own kids and all the young people in their generation. They're going to be making decisions about where to build their lives, and I sure hope it's in Michigan. In a second term, I will stay focused on building a Michigan where every person can get a good paying job with a secure retirement, send their kids to great schools with great teachers, know that they're going to be safe in their community, free from discrimination and hate, and make their own decisions about their bodies. This is an important election. My opponent has shown tonight that she's more interested in dividing us, halting our progress, and dragging us backwards. When she's not scripted and on stage, she stokes violence, spreads conspiracy theories, even attacks working women and teachers.
What?
You know,
she didn't
we
even
need to
believe
come
what she was
together
just saying.
and solve
She just
problems.
slowed down.
As governor for 4 more years, I hope to have the opportunity to continue this service, and I will always put your interests first. I want to thank all the Republicans and independents who have supported me. I want to thank all the police organizations and business groups that have endorsed me, and of course my longtime supporters. I say let's continue to move our state forward, build a brighter future for future generations.
Build back
this
better?
This is a great state, and our future is bright. Asking for your vote.
Mrs. Dixon, your closing statement.
Like many of you, I had children out of school for several years. Like many of you, I had a small business crushed. And like many of you, I lost a loved one. Gretchen Whitmer doesn't want to be defined by her carelessness, her dishonesty, or her hypocrisy during that time. But even if we didn't look at that, we would look at her governorship as a disappointment. Her radical policies have crushed the state. Her choices have been destructive. But don't worry, there is another choice. Michigan, you're not better off 4 years now than you were 4 years ago. In fact, we're in the top 10 for crime in the nation. We're in the bottom 10 for reading and math in the nation. We lost 82,000 jobs, and we lost more small businesses than any other state. Gretchen Whitmer will stand on the stage tonight and tell you that's success. But you've all felt the pain of her failure, and you deserve better. If you choose me as your governor, I will put cops over criminals. I will put parents over politics. I will put students over systems. And I will make sure that we put money back into your pocket and we do a better job with the money that we have. I'll bring back common sense, and I will make sure that we have better schools, more jobs, safer communities, and reliable roads. I want to be your governor, and I want to bring back a
They're both kind of flubbing up
Michigan.
their final thoughts.
I ask for your vote on November 8th, and I promise to serve you well. God bless you.
Thank
Governor, Mr. Dixon, thank you so much for coming in, for engaging in not one, but two statewide debates, the last one being today, and facing the voters. This is very important before they go in and make their final decisions on Election Day. We also want to thank our partners at Oakland University for being wonderful hosts here and all that we've put them through. They've been good sport, and we appreciate it. And I want to thank my fellow panelists,
Who sneezed?
and Doug. Thank you so much from Grand Rapids.
There's one down. We got the next one is queued up and ready. I think we got 2 minutes left before this debate starts. Again, if I can't find this debate, if they have some kind of issue like the Georgia debate had, I will find it, and that is my promise. New question. Please let me know your thoughts on that debate. I feel like it was kind of boring. Final thoughts were a little fumbled. But interesting. There's one thing for sure. Whitmer seems like one of the most fake person I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know how, like, I don't get all these people that, like, think that some of these politicians are like really down to earth human beings and not just like a career politician. She can tutor my Dixon. Oh my God. All right. I'll read some of your comments. If you're new here, please like, share, subscribe, all that crap. I would greatly appreciate it as I'm giving this you guys. We have a live show that we do weekly. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern. We go through clips and stuff. I engage with you. It's a very interactive show. So please subscribe and come hang out with us. We always have a good time. It's lots of laughs. We're trying to laugh our way through the insanity that is our world today, because it is insane. Let's just be real. I think conspiracy theory could be a buzz phrase for the next one. I agree with that one. Okay. I like that. Conspiracy theory. Oz is part of it. Yeah, I'm not a huge Oz fan. But I haven't listened to a lot of his debates or his talking. I just don't care for him for the show. I don't know. I don't know. I just clicked on Fetterman. I subscribed. Hey, thanks, troll. I appreciate it. I hope the debate is at least funny. Don't like either of these guys in PA resident. The best I can hope for is good memes. Same. I'm just hoping it's not too cringy. You know what I mean? Like, if it gets to the point where Fetterman is just like struggling to link any sentences together, you get to the point where it's like it's not funny. It's like someone needs to pull him aside and be like, you can't run, dude. You're not there mentally. Also on Rumble, I appreciate you. Pinky Quood. That's an interesting name. Chords, I appreciate you being here. Andre, always. Fetter woman. I'm still here reading the toxic masculinity. Charlie, I appreciate you being here. I wish you would come here for my live streams. You would be fun. But I don't get why calling two women beautiful toxic masculinity, Charlie. Help me understand that. Because I don't get that, generally. They're not saying these women are so stupid. The only thing good they have going for them is that they're beautiful. That would be toxic masculinity. I would agree with you. But just saying two women are beautiful, you're getting to the point where women are like, I don't understand why I'm so single all the time because of you say stuff like that. You should try to refrain from calling toxic masculinity something like saying people are beautiful. You know, people call me ugly. Women call me ugly. So are that toxic femininity? Like, 'cause I don't have enough money to support you. Don't like Oz, but there's no way I'm voting for Fetterman. And there it is. Fetterman's, okay, I think it's starting to start. Very exciting. Here we go. Let me just switch it over.
Welcome to Debate Night in America. I'm Leland Vittert from News Nation. The stakes tonight could not be higher, not only for the Keystone State, but for the country. Control of the U.S. Senate for either party runs through Pennsylvania. Dennis Owens, WHTM political reporter and anchor here in Harrisburg, along with Lisa Sylvester from WPXI in Pittsburgh, will moderate tonight's debate. We want to welcome our viewers watching tonight from across the country on News Nation. Voters can watch this debate in all 67 Pennsylvania counties on 9 television stations serving the Commonwealth. Before we get started, let's go over tonight's rules. Mr. Fetterman, Mr. Oz, you will have 60 seconds to answer each question. If there's a follow-up question or rebuttal, you will have up to 30 seconds. Each candidate will also have 90 seconds for a closing statement. When your time is up, you'll hear this bell. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Dennis and Lisa.
Thank you, Leland. Good evening, candidates who moments ago just met for the first time. We're happy to have you here. Welcome to our audience watching at home on air, online, and on News Nation. And we encourage everyone who is watching tonight to share your thoughts on social media. Remember to use the hashtag PA Senate Debate.
And you may notice these large monitors that are behind us. This is part of our closed captioning system. It was requested by John Fetterman to help him process the questions that we are asking him tonight and approved by both campaigns, and both candidates can see the monitors.
One of the screens will show only the questions being asked tonight. The second screen will caption the questions and responses from Mehmet Oz. We have live, experienced captioners in studio to ensure we are as accurate as possible in what's sure to be a fast-paced program.
And just a note, for those of you using closed captioning at home, the captions you see are not tied to the captions that the candidates will see here tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. With that, let's get started. Mr. Fetterman, we're going to begin with you. Your political experience includes serving as the mayor of Braddock, a small borough near Pittsburgh, and 1 term as lieutenant governor. You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. He's running to use Pennsylvania. Here's a man that spent more than $20 million of his own money to try to buy that seat. I'm also having to talk about something called the Oz rule, that if he's on TV, he's lying. He did that during his career on his TV show. He's done that during his campaign about lying about our record here. And he's also lying probably during this debate. And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush 2 words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that needs to get back up, and fighting for all forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania that also got knocked down, that needs to get back up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fetterman. Mr. Oz, you are a doctor, a businessman, and television personality. But this is your first run for elected office. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania? You have 60 seconds.
I'm running for the U.S. Senate because Washington keeps getting it wrong with extreme positions. I want to bring civility, balance, all the things that you want to see because you've been telling it to me on the campaign trail. And by doing that, we can bring us together in a way that has not been done of late. Democrats, Republicans talking to each other. John Fetterman takes everything to an extreme, and those extreme positions hurt us all. Let's take crime as an example because it's been such a big problem. Maureen Faulkner accompanied me today to the studio. You know that her husband was a police officer in Philadelphia, was brutally murdered. John Fetterman, during this crime wave, has been trying to get as many murderers convicted and sentenced to life in prison out of jail as possible, including people who are similar to the man who murdered her husband. He does it without with the rest of the parole board agreeing. He's doing it without the families on board. These radical positions extend beyond crime to wanting to legalize all drugs, to open the border, to raising our taxes. I want Washington to be civil again. Where you need it to be less radical. John Fetterman, unfortunately, would bring that.
Mr. Oz, thank you. Lisa.
All right, gentlemen, on to the economy. Pennsylvanians are struggling to put food on the table and gas in their cars. Our Nexstar Emerson College The Hill poll shows the economy and inflation are the biggest concerns for voters. 39% of them listed that as the top issue. Beginning with you, Mr. Oz. You have blamed President Biden and reckless Democratic spending for the inflation crisis, but voters would like to hear your specific plan to cut spending. Please explain in 60 seconds.
Well, if you ask the U.S. government, they'll tell you they have 4% waste and fraud.
Thanks,
Now, I've traveled over the Commonwealth and spoken to countless people. There was a lady in Beaver County at a county fair who told me with fear in her heart that she wanted to provide food for her son's highly nutritious chicken she wanted. She couldn't afford it anymore. That's a big problem. If we've got 4% waste and fraud, we ought to be able to take care of that. John Fetterman's, however, response continually is to raise taxes. He raised taxes as mayor. He tried to raise taxes as a lieutenant governor, 46%. That's a big tax rate. He supported Joe Biden's recent tax rate increase, and he's done that without paying his own taxes 67 times. I'll say that again. He hasn't paid his own taxes 67 times, but he's raising mine and yours. Those are radical positions. They're extreme. They're out of touch with the values of Pennsylvanians. And I can make the difficult decisions, as you do in the operating room as a surgeon. I'll make them cutting our budget as well to make sure we don't have to raise taxes on a population already desperately in pain from the high inflation rate.
Mr. Fetterman, I will allow a 15-second rebuttal. He has specifically said you have not paid your taxes and that you want to raise taxes on Americans. How do you respond?
Absolutely. The Oz rule, of course, he's lying. It was helping two students 17 years ago to help them buy their own homes. They didn't pay the bills, and it got her paid, and it has never been an issue in any of the campaign before. It was all about nonprofit.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Continuing with you, Mr. Fetterman, your opponent has criticized Democratic spending, as you heard. Has the Biden administration overspent? And if so, where do you think spending should be cut? You have 60 seconds.
No, here's what I think we have to fight about inflation here right now. That's what we need to fight about inflation, right now, because it's a tax on working families, and Dr. Oz can't possibly understand what that is like. He has 10 gigantic mansions. We must push back against corporate greed. We must make sure that we're also pushing back against price gouging as well, too. We also be able to make more in Pennsylvania and make more in America. When he had a choice to make his merchandise, the Oz label is on, he made it all in China. Who can you believe that can fight against inflation and pushing back against corporate greed, or somebody that is choosing working in China versus over American workers?
All right. I will allow a 15-second rebuttal to his comments that you have been making things in China. Mr. Oz.
It's going to be a long
I've been trying
one,
to talk about policy issues with the people of Pennsylvania. As a doctor, I listen to their ideas and I want to talk about them. When John Fetterman brings up houses, the irony is he didn't pay for his own house. He got it for $1 from his sister. And he hasn't been able to earn a living on his own. He's lived off his parents. So it's not a topic that we should be debating on the stage. We should be talking about crime and inflation, the issues that are hurting Pennsylvanians that they're talking about at their kitchen table.
No, that's like he got his Pennsylvania
All right,
House
Mr. Fetterman.
from his own inlays from a dollar.
Mr.
That's
Fetterman, we
typical.
have to continue on. We'll continue on with a follow-up question to you, Mr. Oz. This one is just for you. You tweeted in August that you will never stop fighting to lower gas prices for Pennsylvanians. Does that include supporting a suspension of the federal gas tax? You have 30 seconds.
I'm supportive of reducing taxes, but we want to be thoughtful about the long-term game plan to get gas taxes down and, frankly, all energy prices down. I have gone around the Commonwealth. I've witnessed people say, I'm not going on vacation this year because I can't afford to pay to take my trailer to the campground. They can't even get there. What we have to do is ensure that we don't have increased inflation, and the best way to do that is reduce gas prices. John Fetterman has gone after the energy industry, called it a stain on Pennsylvania, and argued we have to ban fracking. That is disconnected from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Oz. We will get to the issue of fracking later on in this discussion. But meantime, turning back to you, Mr. Fetterman, for a follow-up. In an op-ed for the Wilkes-Barre Times Leader, you wrote, quote, "It is time we crack down on the big price gouging corporations that are making record profits while jacking up prices for all of us." How do you plan to do this, sir? You mentioned going after price gouging corporations. How do you plan to do this? You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. We have to keep pushing back on that. And he would never make that choice to fight for families here in Pennsylvania. You know, he has never met an oil company that he doesn't swipe right about. You know, he has never been able to stand up for working families all across Pennsylvania. You know, we must push back. Inflation has hurt Americans and Pennsylvania's families, and it has given the oil companies record profits.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Turning to the next issue, Dennis.
The minimum wage in Pennsylvania and at the national level currently sits at $7.25 an hour and has not been increased since 2009. Each of our neighboring states has raised minimum wages. You see them there on your screen, including New Jersey at $13 an hour and West Virginia at $8.75. But Pennsylvania has not followed suit. The first question is for you, Mr. Fetterman. Do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
Make it 100.
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I think it's a disgrace at $7.25 an hour. And how can a man, you know, with 10 gigantic mansions, you know, has unwilling to talk about a willing wage for anybody? Imagine a single mom with 2 children, trying to raise with them, realizing making $31,000 a year, you know, $15 an hour. You know, I believe every work has dignity, and every paycheck must have dignity in it as well. True, I've always supported a living wage, and we make sure that everyone has economic security.
I have a follow-up for you, Mr. Fetterman. What do you say to small business owners who have told us that if the minimum wage were increased to $15 an hour, it would put them out of business? You have 30 seconds.
Now, we all have to make sure that everyone that works is able to, that's the most American bargain, that if you work full-time, you should be able to live in dignity as well, true. And I believe they haven't have any businesses being we can't have businesses being subsidized by not paying individuals that just simply can't afford to pay their own way.
Okay, Mr. Fetterman, thank you. Mr. Oz, turning to you. Do you support raising the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour? Why or why not? You have 60 seconds.
I think market forces have already driven up the minimum wage. I was with a hotel worker actually here in Harrisburg a few months ago, and he was telling me how hard it was to live on the $15 an hour that he was getting paid. John Fetterman shoots too low. We want much more money than that. And there are many ways to achieve that, but John Fetterman thinks the minimum wage is his weekly allowance from his parents. He's not really cognizant of the real challenges of business owners who've got to balance that with employees. Thankfully, we have a solution. And John, you didn't answer the question. You can't put businesses out of commission in order to pay more wages, because the wages will go to zero, which is John Fetterman's radical plan if you really follow to conclusion. Here's what I would do. We have one of the richest energy states in the country. I believe if we could unleash the energy beneath our feet here in Pennsylvania, there'd be plenty of money to go around. We'd have increased wages, a more reason for students to take vocational classes, to be able to learn trades, which I'm strongly supportive of. We'd also be able to pipe that gas, improve our economy, and reduce inflation. That's a plan that works, and it's humble enough that I can say it broadly.
Thank you. I want to give you, Mr. Fetterman, a 15-second follow-up to what he just said about you.
No, again, it's remarkable. He hasn't really had any answer that he actually had about that in his. He doesn't want to talk about having somebody having a living wage and having somebody able to survive. Again.
And I want to come back to you now, Mr. Oz, for a quick follow-up. What do you say to those Pennsylvanians that he just spoke of that are trying to survive on $7.25 an hour, which is less than all of our neighbors? You have 30 seconds.
Oh, I don't think you should have to survive on $7.25 an hour. I want the minimum wage up as high as it can go. I want to highlight that I have an agenda for prosperity.
What's the
unlike
number?
John Fetterman. I want us all getting paid a lot more than $15. And I answered your question directly in a way that would preserve business owners, job creators, so they thrive, and we'd have lots more employees entering the workforce and then prospering, getting paid $25, $35, $45 an hour. But we're never going to get there if we don't unleash our energy. And John Fetterman's stubbornness on calling it a stain on Pennsylvania is an insult to those workers.
To be clear, you said you want people making a lot more, but that's not through a federal law of minimum wage. That's through market forces?
Market forces should drive it up anyway, and it's already done that.
Thank you.
You know, you should be able to get paid much more than $15 an hour.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Another big issue for voters is abortion. Mr. Oz, we will begin with you. You say that you're pro-life, but you do support abortion exceptions in the cases of rape, incest, and to protect the life of the mother. Aside from those three exceptions, should abortion be banned in America? 60 seconds.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves. Contrast that with my opponent, John Fetterman, who on this debate stage said that he would demand federally mandated rules for all states they'd have to follow that would allow abortion at 38 weeks on the delivery table, and he would force it to be subsidized by taxpayers across the country no matter what their personal beliefs are. That's radical. That's extreme. That is out of touch with what the average voter in Pennsylvania believes is appropriate. Now, ironically, John Fetterman's been running ads on this topic, dishonest ads. I need to correct the record. They were so bad, they got pulled off television stations. I've got, even on this station, he was running dishonest ads that I had pulled off. I haven't had a single ad pulled down. My ads tell the truth. John Fetterman's are a fiction of his imagination.
All right. I'm going to let Mr. Fetterman respond specifically about the ads being pulled off the air, and then we will return to you, Mr. Oz. Mr. Fetterman.
Yeah. I want to look into the face of every woman in Pennsylvania. You know, if you believe that the choice of your reproductive freedom belongs with Dr. Oz, then you have a choice. But if you believe that the choice for abortion belongs between you and your doctor, that's what I fight for. Roe v. Wade, for me, should be the law. He celebrated when Roe v. Wade went down, and my campaign would fight for Roe v. Wade, and if given the opportunity to codify it into law.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Going back to you, I want to circle back to something that you said, Mr. Oz. You mentioned the decision to regulate abortion should be something that is left up to the states. Now, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham has introduced a federal bill to ban abortion after 15 weeks. I know that you've been asked about this question before. If the vote were held today, you were elected senator, you're on the Senate floor, the clerk calls you, there's a roll call vote. Are you a yay or a nay? How would you vote on the Lindsey Graham bill? You have 30 seconds.
Lisa, I don't even need 30 seconds. I'll give you a bigger answer. I am not going to support federal rules that block the ability of states to do what they wish to do. The abortion decision should be left up to states, and specifically when John Fetterman...
You roll with Doug Mastriano.
John, when I'm done, John, you'll have your turn, John.
One moment, Mr. Fetterman. Continue, Mr. Oz.
I've been very clear on my desire as a physician not to interfere with how states decide. So when John purposely, knowingly misrepresents that to women, he scares them. He's purposely trying to alarm them, and the fear-mongering isn't working. Running tens of millions of dollars of ads claiming that I'm against all abortions when he knows that's not right, claiming that I'm going to be strict with Pennsylvania when he knows that's not honest. I can't be any clearer than I've been on the stage today. John Fetterman, if you just hear that one story today, I'd be really happy, but I know you're not going to, because you're going to go right back to telling the fables that you believe.
Mr. Oz, I want a 15-second clarification. You are saying that you would leave it up to the states, that the federal government does not have a role here. So are you saying you would not vote for the Lindsey Graham bill?
any bill that violates what I said, which is the federal government interfering with the state rule on abortion, I would vote against. What I feel strongly about is that women in Pennsylvania understand what I'm saying and not believe that someone who's taken an extreme position like John Fetterman represents them, because most women do not believe that we should, at a federal level, codify 38 weeks of permission to have an abortion and have taxpayers pay for it.
So a yes or no on the Lindsey Graham bill?
I think I've answered it very, very clearly 3 times, Lisa.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Oz. Turning to you, Mr. Fetterman, you have frequently stated your belief that abortion should be safe and legal. Do you support any limits on when a woman can have an abortion? Please explain in 60 seconds.
You know, what I support on Roe v. Wade. That was the law of the land for 50 years. He celebrated when it fell down, and I would fight to reestablish on Roe v. Wade. That's what I run on. That's what I believe, and I've always believed that the choice belongs women and their doctors, and he believes that the choice should be with him or Republican legislators all across this nation.
All right.
I'm sorry, I must correct that. Once again, he's misrepresented what I've said, but he also said something very dishonest. On this debate stage, he said very specifically, in his primary debate, when he was still debating, that he would support 38 weeks of mandated rules by the federal government that would prevent any state from blocking it. So that's not Roe versus Wade.
That's not true. I support Roe v. Wade. That's the simple.
John, you said specifically you would support a federal rule on 38 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important that John at least acknowledge that he's not honest here, because you said the opposite on TV.
Mr. Oz, we must continue on. Mr. Fetterman, turning to you, we have a follow-up question. Would you support allocating federal funds to transport women who live in states where abortion is banned to states where they can get one, and why? 30 seconds.
I would. I would, because I believe abortion rights is a universal right for all women in America. I believe that abortion is health care, and I believe that that is a choice that belongs with each woman and their doctor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Turning to the next issue,
We're going to have like 100 abortion questions.
Let's turn to what has become one of the key themes of this race, fitness to serve. For these individual questions, there will be no rebuttals allowed.
Finally.
Mr. Fetterman, we begin with you. You suffered, as you mentioned a moment ago, a stroke 4 days before the May primary. Last week, you released this note from your doctor saying you can work full duty in public office, but you have not released your detailed medical records surrounding your stroke. Mr. Fetterman, will you pledge tonight to release those records in the interest of transparency? You have 60 seconds.
No. To me, for transparency is about showing up. I'm here today to have a debate. I have, speeches in front of 3,000 people in Montgomery County, all across Pennsylvania, big crowds. I believe if my doctor believes that I'm fit to serve, and that's what I believe is appropriate. And now with 2 weeks before the election, I have run a campaign, and I've been very transparent about being very open about the fact we're in use captioning. And I believe that, again, my doctors, the real doctors that I believe in, they all believe that I'm ready to be served.
Follow up, I didn't hear you say you would release your full medical records. Why not? You have 30 seconds.
No, again, my doctor all believes that I'm fit to be serving, and that's what I believe is where I'm standing.
Okay, Mr. Fetterman, thank you. Mr. Oz, you have built a lucrative career around medicine, but you've been criticized even by some fellow physicians for promoting, quote, unproven, ill-advised, and at times potentially dangerous treatments. What is your response to that? You have 60 seconds.
One of the great blessings of traveling around Pennsylvania is you run into people who have watched the show. They thank me very much for giving them life-saving advice on chronic issues like high blood pressure or dealing with their anxiety. The show did very well because it provided high-quality information that empowered people, which was exactly what I want to do when I'm a senator. Give people the power. Let them make decisions for their well-being. Now, John Fetterman's approach to health is a very dangerous one. He believes we should socialize medicine. He embraced this with Bernie Sanders, who he endorsed. The two candidates call themselves the two most progressive people in America. When you have socialized medicine, Dennis, you shut down the ability of people to get access to health care. Doctors stop practicing. There are no medications available. The lines get long. It's a disaster, and it puts people at risk. So I don't believe we should allow socialized medicine, the abolition of all private health care insurance in America, and radical positions like the ones taken by John Fetterman make him too extreme to serve. If we're going to bring balance to Washington, you got to bring people who understand the ramifications. Even Joe Biden, Even Joe Biden called John Fetterman's idea, I'll quote him, preposterous.
Mr. Fetterman, I'm going to let you respond in just a minute, but I have a follow-up for you first, Mr. Oz. Did you or your company make a profit from promoting those products? You have 30 seconds.
I never sold weight loss products as described in those commercials. It's a television show, like this is a television show, so people can run commercials on the shows, and that's a perfectly appropriate and very transparent process. I ruffled a lot of feathers on my show because I told people the truth, and I'm proud of that. I'll do the exact same thing as a U.S. senator. But there's no way to defend what John Fetterman has done with socialized medicine. That is a radical departure from what we in America have accepted.
I must
relationship
respond
between
to
your
that.
John, you'll have your turn. John, let me finish.
I must respond to that.
There must be a relationship between a doctor and a patient, and that's what I would direct patients to do.
Thank you. Mr. Fetterman, he accused you of socialized medicine, supporting socialized medicine. What is your response?
Again, it's the Oz rule. He's on TV and he's lying. I never supported any of that thing. You know, he keeps talking about Bernie Sanders. You know, 3 years ago he was on his show and he hugged him and he said, "I love this guy." You know what? Why don't you pretend that you live in Vermont instead of Pennsylvania and run against Bernie Sanders? Because all you can do is talk about Bernie Sanders, because my truth is that healthcare is a basic fundamental right, and I believe in expanding that, and I believe about supporting, fighting for healthcare, the kind of healthcare that saved my life.
Dennis, that was dishonest. He explicitly supported socialized medicine.
Mr. Oz, we have a lot of topics to get to. I think we did this. Lisa, you go ahead.
We are going to move on to the next topic, and this has come up earlier, and that is the issue of fracking. Pennsylvania only trails Texas in terms of natural gas production. Both of you have taken shifting positions on the issue of fracking. Mr. Oz, we begin with you. You wrote a column in 2014 calling for no fracking pending health study results. But in a video posted on social media in March, you said, quote, "Natural gas guarantees high-paying skilled jobs right here in Pennsylvania, so back off Biden. Give us freedom to frack."
Thank you, for real,
Mr. Oz,
Hit that
please
thumbs up.
explain
86
that
watching.
changing
Thank you so
position.
much.
60 seconds.
I've been very consistent. Fracking has been demonstrated. It's a very old technology to be safe. It is a lifeline for this commonwealth to be able to build wealth, similar to what they've been able to achieve in other states. For that reason, I strongly support fracking, drilling, the piping of that natural gas. In fact, I'd build a facility even in Philadelphia so we can export it to our allies and help them, the ones that are struggling now in Eastern and Western Europe because of the Ukrainian war. John Fetterman calls fracking a stain on Pennsylvania. He says that he would sign a moratorium to ban its continued use. He's against pipelines. He supported the vote against the Keystone pipeline that ended up shutting it down. He supports Biden's desire to ban fracking on public lands, which are our lands, all of our lands together. This is a extreme position on energy. If we unleashed our energy here in Pennsylvania, it would help everybody. Why John Fetterman is so rigidly stuck on fighting against energy companies is stunning to me, because it's the jobs I want. Tens of thousands of high-paying jobs to help Pennsylvanians.
Thank you, Mr. Oz.
Oz rule.
Mr. Fetterman, 15
I absolutely support fracking. In fact, I live across the street from a steel mill, and they were going to frack to create their own energy in order to make them more competitive. And I support that, living closer to anybody else in Pennsylvania for fracking to myself. I believe that we need independence with energy, and I believe I've walked that line my entire career. I believe Democrats...
Mr. Fetterman, I do have a specific question which you can continue on this topic, but you have made two conflicting statements regarding fracking. In a 2018 interview, you said, quote, "I don't support fracking at all. I never have." But earlier this month, you told an interviewer, quote, "I support fracking. I support the energy independence that we should have here in the United States." So, Mr. Fetterman, please explain your changing position. 60 seconds.
I've always supported fracking, and I always believe that independence with our energy is critical, and we can't be held, ransom to somebody like Russia. I've always believed that energy independence is critical, and I've always believed that, and I do support fracking. I've never taken any money from their their industry, but I support how critical it is that we produce our own energy and create energy independence.
I must correct the record.
Just a second, Mr. Oz. I do want to clarify something. You're saying tonight that you support fracking, that you've always supported fracking, but there is that 2018 interview that you said, quote, I don't support fracking at all. So how do you square the two?
I do support fracking, and I support fracking, and I stand and I do support fracking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fetterman.
I'm sorry, Lisa, but there's not just a statement you read. There are multiple. There's pictures of him signing a moratorium.
We have to move on.
But we have to get the fundamentals of the truth out here. John Fetterman over and over again took positions against energy.
We have a lot of topics. You will have a chance to have that in your
closing. One comment then. The energy industry is living in fear of John Fetterman. I want to know why.
Mr. Oz, we want to now turn to public safety. Mr. Fetterman, Republicans have called you dangerously soft on crime. The Pennsylvania State Troopers Association has endorsed Democrat Josh Shapiro for governor. But in this race, it endorsed your Republican opponent, Mr. Oz. What is your response to those endorsements? And what is your response to accusations that you are, quote, dangerously soft on crime? You have 60 seconds.
No. I believe that I run on my record on crime. You know, I ran to be mayor back in 2005 in order to fight gun violence, and that's exactly what I did. In working with the police and working with our community, I was able to stop gun violence for 5.5 years as mayor. Ever accomplished before or since my time as mayor, because I'm the only person on this stage right now that was successful about pushing back against gun violence and being the community more safe. You know, all he's done is just put a plan up on his website in the last 24 hours. He has no experience. He has never made any attempt to try to address crime during his entire career, except showing up for photo ops here in Philadelphia.
I will give you 15 seconds to respond to that, and then I have a question for you.
The Fraternal Order of Police from Braddock, the small town he represented, endorsed me. They supported me because what he's saying is not true. Violence skyrocketed in Braddock. I mean, the town wasn't in a good shape when John got there. It got worse when he was there. People kept leaving. So, of course, you're going to have all kinds of aberrations. But, John, the city was dangerous under your leadership, and that's why the
I want to turn to you now,
me.
Mr. Oz. This past summer, Congress passed the first gun control bill in decades. That would not have happened without the support of the man you are running to replace, Pat Toomey. How would you have voted on that bill, and would you continue Toomey's legacy as being one of the lead Republicans in Congress on pushing for gun reforms? You have 60 seconds.
I have been supported by Pat Toomey. I've enjoyed working with him. I think he's done a wonderful job. There are parts of that bill that I like a lot. For example, I like the fact that there are background checks that are being strengthened now, so we can make sure that people who should not have guns don't get guns. I also like the fact that there was a lot of money invested for mental health, which is an important part of the equation. I've been to Philadelphia. I've done prayer vigils with black clergy leaders who are desperately trying to save the people in their community. Half the murders in Philadelphia are committed by people under 18. We have got to get mental health services to these people, and it's not happening now. But part of the problem is that we have taken away the ability of police to do their job, and that's on John Fetterman. Because John Fetterman has taken such a harsh position against them. He's undermined them at every level, taken away some of their funding. He's pushed for Krasner, who he admires tremendously, and he's spoken highly of him just this week. He's taken his policies to a new extreme. He's argued that people should be let out of jail without any bail, no matter what they did to get in there. He's argued to release 1/3 of all prisoners. 1/3 of all prisoners out of touch.
Quickly, 15 seconds. Would you have voted for that Pat Toomey supported bill? If you
I would have tried to improve that bill. There are things that I think most of us appreciate. I wasn't there at the time, so I can't speak to what was possible. But I do know there are parts of that bill that do make sense, and the ones I described should be followed. Let's see how it works out.
Okay, thank you. Lisa.
On to our next issue, and that is illegal immigration. It has been a problem in the United States for decades, but it is now spiking.
Thank you for subscribing.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection just released numbers from fiscal year 2022. They show more than 2.7 million total enforcement actions in the U.S. That is the most ever. Mr. Oz, beginning with you. Republican governors in the South have been sending migrants to Democratic-run cities and states. without a plan or without any coordination. It is certainly gaining a lot of attention, but is it an effective way to deal with the influx of migrants? You have 60 seconds.
Lisa, we have a catastrophe at the border, and we should not have sanctuary cities as John Fetterman has tried to introduce. But I've been into the parts of Philadelphia and Allentown and Reading where we have large Latino populations. I understand the challenges of the border. My father was an immigrant. My mother were immigrants. I understand what legal immigration offers us, but the completely porous, open nature of our border, which John Fetterman supports, has created a humanitarian crisis with cartels profiting with human trafficking operations. They take the money, they buy narcotics from China and bring that into our country, and it's making every state a border state. Pennsylvania is already a border state because we're top 3 in the country in fentanyl overdoses. Lisa, I can't go anywhere where, and giving a big event where I don't meet multiple people who say their personal lives have been destroyed because of fentanyl overdoses. Yet John Fetterman not only wants an open border, not only supports sanctuary cities, but he wants to legalize all hard drugs in America, including narcotics. That is, out of touch with everybody. That radical position was tried in Oregon, which he endorsed, 50% homicide increase rate.
Oh, one moment. I will give a 15-second rebuttal.
Yeah, that is, again, the Oz rule. That is just not true.
Oh, my God.
Here, his family's company was levied the largest fine for immigration hiring of immigrant illegals, and I think you should sit this one out about in terms of what a secure border.
All right. We do have a follow-up specifically for you, Mr. Fetterman. Vice President Kamala Harris says the southern border is secure, yet we are seeing an unprecedented number of migrants crossing. Is the border secure? And if not, what would you do to fix what both parties are calling a crisis? You have 60 seconds, Mr. Fetterman.
I believe that a secure border can be compatible with compassion. I believe we need a comprehensive and bipartisan solution for immigration. That's what I believe. I don't ever recall in the Statue of Liberty did they say, take our tired, huddled masses and put them on a bus and use cheap political stunts about them. I believe we have to develop a comprehensive and bipartisan solution to address our issue here for immigration here in our nation.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. On to the next issue.
But John's not addressing the elephant in the room, fentanyl.
We have to move on to the next issue. We will be circling back on that.
Turning now to foreign policy. Mr. Fetterman, what do you believe is the greatest foreign threat to the United States of America? You have 60 seconds.
Donald Trump being
elected. I believe, is right now is China. I believe China is not our friend, and I believe that we can't be able to push back, and we need to stand against China. And I believe that Dr. Oz has chosen to manufacture all of his merchandise on his name on it in China. Which one of us on this stage is going to stand up against and stand firm against China? And I believe that's our single biggest issue right now, to make sure that we address China and make sure that we know that it's not our friend.
Mr. Oz, what do you believe is the greatest foreign threat to the United States of America? You have 60 seconds.
The fact that our country is not projecting strength. Take, for example, what we're doing with Iran. In order to try to get them to give us a little oil so we can deal with the catastrophe that Russia has caused, we have gone to them and tried to sign a deal that would allow them once again to have the nuclear power to blow up Israel, which they promised they would do. John Fetterman supports that deal. It doesn't make any sense for America to treat our enemies better than our allies. We have to message with our strong voice and the energy we have in our country that we have control over our future. And the best way for America to establish its dominance is to unleash the energy here in Pennsylvania and across the country. By not doing that, not only do we cause all kinds of problems with local jobs and inflation, but we're destroying our ability to remain energy dominant, and we're not able to become allies like we should be for countries like European nations, which are going to struggle with their coldest winter ever. It's the best way to punch Putin back and to teach China a lesson is American energy to reign supreme. And John Fetterman doesn't like American energy, and they are scared of him because they know they can't trust him. He's proven it.
Mr. Oz, thank you. Lisa.
All right, on to our next issue. In our recent Nexstar poll, a hypothetical rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump in 2024 would be a statistical tie in Pennsylvania. 46% of people said they would vote for former President Trump. 45% for President Biden. Mr. Oz, would you support a Trump 2024 run, and why 60 seconds?
I'll support whoever the Republican Party puts up. And I have reached out across the aisle on my campaign because I want to bring balance to Washington. And I've tried to work with Democrats and Republicans and people in the middle, and people unsure, and people who forgot, and people who got angry with where their party was headed. I want to bring us together to make this country do what it's always been able to do. Unify, not divide, and address the problems as a surgeon, because in the OR, that's what I do. I just fix the big problem in front of me. John Fetterman, however, cannot go to Washington and work with the other side because he doesn't even get along with his own side. He criticized Joe Biden for not spending enough money and not sidling up close enough to Bernie Sanders. He says he won't work with Joe Manchin. He said, if you like Joe Manchin, don't vote for me. So if you're picking fights with your own party, you're not going to be able to reach across the aisle to the other side. His extenable for Republican lawmakers. We need to send someone to Washington who understands the importance of balance, sensible decision-making, and a common sense approach to the challenges that we all face. That's not John Fetterman.
Mr. Oz, Donald Trump has supported you. He has endorsed you. Why won't you fully commit to supporting him in 2024?
Oh, I do. I would support Donald Trump if he decided to run for president.
All right.
But this is bigger than one candidate. This is
yet,
a much bigger story about how we are going to build a bigger tent to let more Americans feel safe.
Are you concerned about the ongoing legal investigations involving the former president? 30 seconds, sir.
I haven't followed them very carefully. I've been campaigning pretty aggressively. They'll work themselves out. I have tremendous confidence in the American legal system, and I believe law and order will reign supreme. But speaking about that topic, there's one person on this stage who's broken the law, we believe. John Fetterman took a shotgun, chased an unarmed African-American man, and put the gun, apparently, according to that man, to his chest. John, you weren't pulled over by the police. They let you go. You were the mayor at the time. Why haven't you apologized to that unarmed, innocent black man who you put a shotgun to his chest?
All right. We will allow a 30-second response to that, Mr. Fetterman, specifically what he was saying referring to the incident in Braddock.
I made the opportunity to defend our community as the chief law enforcement officer there. Everybody in Braddock, an overwhelmingly majority community of black community, all understood what happened. You know, they understood what happened, and everybody agreed that, and nobody believes that it was anything about me making a split-second decision to defend our community as well.
Why not apologize?
Mr. Oz, please. We are still with Mr. Fetterman. Turning to you right now, you support a Biden run. Do you support a Biden run in 2024? Why in 60 seconds?
That's honestly, it's up to his choice whether he, and if he does choose to run, I would absolutely support him. But ultimately, that's ultimately only his choice.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. A follow-up question on this. Our Nexstar poll shows 51% of Pennsylvania voters disapprove of the president's job performance. You have publicly supported many of his policy positions. Are there any that you disagree with? 30 seconds.
No, I just believe he needs to do more about supporting and fighting about inflation. And I do believe he can do more about that. But at the end of the day, I think Joe Biden is a good family man, and I believe he stands for the union way of life. And I believe that unemployment is already down to the lowest level in the last 50 years.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Dennis.
Let's turn now, gentlemen, to the issue of Social Security. It is only fully funded through 2034. Many Americans are worried that they will never receive their full benefit or have to accept cuts to their benefits. Mr. Fetterman, how are you going to make sure it is there for them? You have 60 seconds.
We need to make sure that Dr. Oz and the Republicans believe in cutting Medicare and Social Security. And I believe that they have to support and expand Social Security. And if somebody send me to Washington, D.C., I would support and stand and to support security, Social Security.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Oz. Same question to you. How are you going to make sure that Social Security is available for future Americans? You have 60 seconds.
We made a deal with the wonderful seniors of our nation. They worked their hearts out. They paid into a program. No one's going to touch it on my watch except to make sure that it's stronger than it is right now. Social Security, Medicare, which I know a lot about as a doctor, are the fundamental element of security for our seniors, and they deserve to feel like they're valued by our nation. John Fetterman, again, has been running ads and saying that I'm against those with no proof. I have never said anything different than what I'm saying to you on this stage. But in an effort to fearmonger with people who are older and can be taken advantage of, he'll run these ads. John, it's reprehensible, but it's also reflective of your approach to doing these things. You haven't shown up on the campaign trail. You haven't answered questions from voters, not once on the campaign trail. You haven't answered questions from media once on the campaign trail, even just to show off that you could do it. And this is the only debate I could get you to come to talk to me on. And I had to beg on my knees to get you to come. And if it wasn't for Dennis probably getting involved, I don't think it would have happened. Seniors need to know more about your radical left positions, and I need to be able to tell them about my positions. That's what democracy is built on. We exchange ideas, the voters decide. You have hidden from them.
Mr. Oz, I'm going to let you have 15 seconds in a moment, Mr. Fetterman, but can you give us a specific example of what you would do to protect Social Security?
Well, for one, we have to make sure that it adequately increases with the higher inflation rates that we have. So we've got to make that 4% of wasted money that right now is in the budget redirected appropriately. And one of the first places that I would use it is Social Security and Medicare. And here's the reason. One of the worst things we can do to a people is give them bad quality care. And so if you have if you have people who are not going to see a doctor, for example, because they can't afford it, they'll get sicker. Bad medicine means more cost. No one benefits.
Thank you. Mr. Fetterman, he said a few things a moment ago. I want to give you 15 seconds to respond to those.
Now, again, I can't just say one thing other than that Dr. Oz would not support, and he would support cutting Medicare. And that's
John, why do you say that? I've never said that.
It's absolutely a fact. It's a fact. You would have voted against the Inflation Reduction Act, which has dropped our
If you vote for
prescription
Fetterman
drugs.
at this point, I don't know
He
what to
doesn't
say.
believe.
Okay, gentlemen.
I just don't know what to say anymore.
All right, we are moving on to the topic of education. The cost of college
like the
tuition is
craziest
now out of reach for
debate
many,
I've ever
many
watched.
families. Our question is for both of you. We start with Mr. Oz. What is your plan to bring down the cost of higher education long term? You have 1 minute, Mr. Oz.
I've worked in academic medical centers my whole life, so I'm in higher education. And I can tell you the reason the prices have gone up sixfold in the last 40 years is not because the education quality is better. We've added extra layers of middle level individuals who don't actually improve the quality education, in my opinion. There's a lot of expenses now incurred by these institutions, and it's not right for the American people to be stuck with the bill. I would push them to offer more electronic classes. Half the kids don't live on campus anyway. John Fetterman's approach, however, is not to deal with the unnecessarily high costs, but just to pay it. So if you want to pay students who didn't pay their loans back, basically what John Fetterman and Joe Biden are arguing for is for plumbers who didn't go to college and couldn't, for a bunch of reasons, afford it, to pay the bills of lawyers who went to graduate school and haven't paid their debt back. I don't think that's right for the American people. We want a fair system. Drop the cost down by pushing for more value for the money we're spending, and then ensure there's a high-quality education that lets people make a living when they graduate.
All right, I will allow a 15-second rebuttal specifically on the issue of student loan debt, which Mr. Oz was referring to. Mr. Fetterman.
Again, Dr. Oz, loves free money when it's a $500,000 tax break on one of his, homes down in a ranch in Florida, and whether it was a $50 tax break, about his farm in Montgomery County. So it's about supporting and helping, young earners, students to give them a break. I believe that supporting.
All right, let me just ask specifically with the plan to ease student loan debt, the debt forgiveness of $10,000, $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. Do you support that position?
I do absolutely support that. I believe, like I said, it's about helping young learners, be able to get a better start, getting off in the start of their life. And I do believe that, and I believe a majority of Americans support that as well too, helping young learners.
All right, Mr. Fetterman, I want to ask you the same question that I asked Mr. Oz. And what is your plan to bring down the cost of higher education long term? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, I don't think he didn't answer. He didn't answer the question whatsoever.
I did answer the question.
Mr. Oz, please give him a moment.
You didn't. I fundamentally believe that every quality public university education should be very affordable in every state, and I think that needs to be a significant investment. To make sure that anyone be able to afford to go to get a 4-degree a university degree, say at Penn State or at Pitt or any state schools to make it much more affordable. And that means acquiring a significant investment to make sure and create it affordable that every family can afford.
How exactly, Mr. Fetterman, do you propose doing that to make it more affordable for families?
No, I just believe, making it that much more, it costs too much, and I believe providing the resources to reduce the tuition, to allow families to be able to afford it.
All right, we have a follow-up question. This one now is for both of you. This is from News Nation viewer Ann Andrews, a registered nurse from Conneautville near Erie. Ann is a vocational educational instructor for a university and a practicing registered nurse.
If you were elected, could you please tell me what you would be doing for vocational education in the state of Pennsylvania as well as our nation?
So, Mr. Oz, if elected, what would you do for vocational education? You have 30 seconds.
I've visited vocational schools. I have an answer. But, John, because obviously I wasn't clear enough for you to understand this, there's no question that cutting out the middle levels of higher education and providing digital programs would reduce the cost of education. It's a concrete set of ideas that I'd like to move on. With regard to vocational education, this is really important for us to allow our trade unions to get more closely linked with the vocational schools. I was in a vocational school in Westmoreland, and they have about 1,000 kids. They could take 2,000 kids. Funding those programs is the smartest way to invest our tax dollars. We'll turn out twice as many children who have a job as soon as they graduate. It supports our trade unions who want those kids in their positions anyway. It makes the whole program work.
Thank you, Mr. Oz. Mr. Fetterman, if elected, what would you do for vocational education? You have 30 seconds.
Again, I think it's just the same way the university for degrees as well too. Supporting that and partnering with the unions and making sure that vocation training are is affordable, and providing the resources to make sure everyone has the opportunity. Going to college isn't the right choice for every person, but going to those kind of vocational schools, able to create a career to reach a lot of high salary, and again, supporting to reduce those costs are critical too.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Dennis.
Moving now, multiple members of Congress, specifically Democrats, have called for the Supreme Court to be expanded. Candidates, we want to know where you stand on this. Mr. Fetterman, should the Supreme Court be expanded? And if so, by how many justices? You have 60 seconds.
I don't believe, I don't stand, and I don't believe in that. I fundamentally believe that even though I don't agree with the ideological breakup of the Supreme Court, I believe it's not about changing the rules. It's about acknowledging where we're at, much the way the Republicans want to try to change the Constitution about how our Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is going to be done, and I don't support that. So I think it's critical that we be consistent, and I do not believe in supporting the Supreme Court.
Mr. Oz, same question to you. Should the Supreme Court be expanded? If so, by how many justices? You have 60 seconds.
I would never touch the makeup of the Supreme Court, and I would advocate to leave it the exact same size it is. But John Fetterman's radical positions have spilled over into what he would do in Washington. One of the first things he has said, and he came back to the campaign trail, is that he wanted to bust the filibuster, which means removing the brakes on the Senate overreacting. That's a risk.
That's true. That is true.
But if you do that, then you would free up the Democrats in the Senate without getting the normal amount of votes to actually expand the Supreme Court, add more states, do things that are detrimental to the well-being of the country. So I think, on your first day back, arguing that we should get rid of the filibuster is a dangerously radical move that would hurt Washington. It's not in our nation's best interest.
Thank you both very much.
All right, at this time, we are ready for our closing statements.
Okay,
you
here we
each
go.
have 90 seconds to convince Pennsylvanians to vote for you on Election Day. Mr. Fetterman, you are first, 90 seconds.
Once again, I would just like to say that my campaign is all about fighting for anyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to get back up again. I'm also fighting for any forgotten community all across Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that had to be made to get back up. I've made my entire career dedicating to those kinds of pursuits. I started as a GED instructor back in Braddock over 20 years ago because I believe it's about serving Pennsylvania, not about using Pennsylvania for their own end interests as well. To me, careers are revealed by your real underlying values. And my values have always been about fighting for forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fetterman. Mr. Oz, your final thoughts, 90 seconds.
I've loved traveling to the four corners
Michael,
of the beautiful
thanks.
Commonwealth, and I've heard your problems. I'm a surgeon, doctor. I listen to what you say, and I'm trying to help address them today. I've talked to seniors worried their Social Security checks wouldn't go far enough with the raging inflation. I've talked to couples want to make their first down payment on a new house, and they can't afford it anymore because of interest rates. I've talked to families
You want to cut
petrified.
Social Security.
Mr. Fetterman, it's his turn for his closing.
I've talked to families worried about fentanyl showing up in their mailbox and literally taking the lives of their children who they find blue in bed. I've talked to families who won't let their kids go outside because of the crime wave that's been facilitated by left radical policies like the ones John Fetterman has been advocating for. But here's the deal, right? None of this has to happen. This is all very addressable. I'm a surgeon. I'm not a politician. We take big problems, we focus on them, and we fix them. We do it by uniting, by coming together, not dividing. And by doing that, we can get ahead. But I've got one question to challenge you with, just one question. If you take what I'm saying to heart, ask yourself this and others in your family. Are you unhappy with where America's headed? I am. And if you are as well, then I'm the candidate for change. I'm a living embodiment of the American dream. I believe we're the land of opportunity, the land of plenty. I believe we can balance a budget without recklessly spending. I believe we can have an unleashed energy policy that helps us all. I believe that we can have safe city streets and a secure border so legal immigrants can come across, but you shut the fentanyl out. I believe we can give parents choice in where their kids go to school. We can have affordable health care. But most of all, I believe in you. And if you can do this together, and we can, I would ask for your vote on Election Day. God bless you.
We do have one final
Thank
question,
you.
an important
They keep
issue
saying
in
God bless you.
Pennsylvania. The eyes of the state are on this debate tonight, but on Sunday they will be on Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia as the state's two NFL teams go head-to-head. Mr. Fetterman, Steelers or Eagles, and why?
Oh, God. So corny.
Oh, clearly, always for the Steelers.
Mr. Oz.
I'll be at the game rooting for my Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Gentlemen, thank you both so much. This does conclude our debate. We do want to thank our candidates for being with us, Mr. Fetterman and Mr. Oz, and for all of you at home who have been watching. Thank you so much.
And we want to thank our team at WHTM for hosting us at their studios tonight. Remember, voters on Election Day is
well. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. All right, new poll. Who do you guys felt... I'm having a moment. Who do you think won? Fetterman? Fetterwoman? Or Oz? I feel like you'd be insane to say Fetterman. It's like a religion to you, you know? You don't care about... That was insane. That was like Fetterman won. Yeah. Yeah, right. We lost. That's true. We all lost. We all lost. Oh, I like the only Fetterman point. I was like, oh, talking about China, interesting. I would have never guessed that. I thought you would just do Putin drink, but Fester lost. It was a train wreck. It was bad. One person could easily hold a conversation while the other one was struggling. CNN Fetterman won. Exactly. maybe not CNN, but definitely MSNBC. They're like, MSNBC headline probably right now is Fetterman destroys Dr. Oz. That was an embarrassment. Yeah. 10 mansions drink. Oh, we'll never forget 10 mansions. Guys, if you're new here, I would appreciate subscribing. And we go live here 5 p.m. Eastern almost every day, and we have a good time. We try to laugh. We try to watch clips. A lot more talking than just me watching. I try not to talk over during a debate. I don't want to be one of those streams who just talk the entire time over the debate. You never hear anything. I can't stand those streams. I tried to be something different. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Evan Ducati, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, good night. Dixon Whitmer at least had some moments. That's true. At least this one had a little bit more fire, I would say. Fetterman won every moment. Every minute, says Wyatt. Dr. Oz, 10 mentions bad. Yeah. I think like the whole like you're rich, therefore you're stupid. Like that's such a dumb argument anyways. Like who cares? Also, I get that you're not from here, something like we live in America. I feel like also Dr. Oz talking about how he's a surgeon, a doctor. It's like, of course he's going to talk about it. It's the same way with all politicians. Like if they served a time in the military, they're going to bring it up every 5 seconds. They feel like that's a easy way in. And of course, if something you guys should notice is if when you go online and you look up like any of the corporate media websites and stuff like that, anytime they talk about Dr. Oz, they never put doctor in front of his name. They just put Oz or his first name, and that's on purpose because it makes it look like a doctor versus John Fetterman. And of course, you're going to vote for the doctor because they're smart. Charlie, Charlie, I was in the Army. Thank you. Thank you very much. We got a lot of military dudes in here. Fetterwoman versus Dr. Oz desperately needed Floridians. Ed McMahon. Well, we did need Ed McMahon, but we didn't have an audience for Ed McMahon to lose his mind with. We got some more debates coming up too as well, so I hope you guys tune for that. I'm still waiting for Fetterman to give an answer. I almost felt bad for him. There was like some time his family, if you love him, you should pull him out, I wish Dr. Oz would have been more aggressive. Yeah, you kind of think that, but also, hey, thanks for subscribing, Wyatt. You can't look too aggressive or else it looks like he's beating up, it's like me beating up an old man. You can't do that. So it would be a bad look if he was like too aggressive. And so I can understand why he didn't go too hard on some of his like non-answers. You know what I mean? You gotta have some kind of decency about it. I would almost be like to the point where like, I don't think you should be a running man. I care about you. And I think like, maybe have that empathetic push. Dude, you got 95 people on the stream, dude. Hey, thanks, Papa. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'm still waiting we have 234 people watching on Rumble, so that's awesome too. Thank you, Rumble. I'm looking at Rumble chat. Don't you worry. If you chat, I'll be happy to answer questions, or if you want to know like my thoughts or what I believe. Dr. Oz is a good balance and all. Dr. Oz was a surprise for me. I didn't think he would be that great, and he had a lot of great answers. I don't agree with everything he puts out. I didn't think he would be a great candidate, but that's just me. He's clearly better than Fetterman. I mean, like, even if you're a leftist, like, I get it. But you're just going to be the butt of jokes all the time if you vote him in. When is the next one you're streaming? I think we have some debates on Thursday and Friday. But I always put up debates and stuff like that. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. So Derek, who would you vote for? I'd vote for Dr. Oz if I had to. I wouldn't be excited about that vote. I'll tell you that much. It would be like, you can't vote for Fetterman. I don't care if you're a Democrat. Like, by voting for Fetterman, you are acknowledging like him being the state he's in is okay. You know what I mean? And I want to get away from these kind of candidates who are just like people that shouldn't be running for office. We need to get away from that. We need to have people that can like hold arguments, or no more like old people like Nancy Pelosi or, like those kind of people. You vote for Fetterman, it just gets worse. I used to date Jennifer Westphal. She was hot. Looking at his Facebook page, the amount of support he has is mind-blowing. Well, he's got so much money. I mean, Fetterman he's outspending, all the Democrats are outspending Republicans right now. So, and I'm sure a lot of his support isn't from the state also. Good leaders of truth made me see clearly now the propaganda is gone. Yeah. And also, if they continue, propaganda, it gets harder and harder to come by because of the internet. Because people like me, people like you, people on Twitter call crap out that's fake. And that's just the reality of it now, propaganda back in the old days when they said that the news was good and not as biased is because they didn't have people to call them out. And they didn't have people that were recording stuff. And we didn't have passive information so quickly to one another. That's why they want to censor us. Because they don't want to have an even playing field. They don't want to be held accountable for things that they say. They are crazy. I plan to vote for Fetterman 92 times. Oh, God. I'm like, you can't do that. Don't do that. They voted for Biden in his brain. I don't think Biden was as bad as Fetterman. He's getting close, but Fetterman's way farther gone and shouldn't be running. You shouldn't, okay? Like, I don't want to... Any serious person would say he shouldn't be running. Only people that are like, vote blue or I die. Those are the people that are going to tell you that Fetterman is perfectly fine. And Rapone, good show tonight. Have a good one, guys. Hey, thank you so much, man. Or woman. I don't know. Thank you so much. Fetterman definitely worse than Biden. Yes. I would vote for Dr. Oz all day. Yeah, I think you'd be crazy not to. That's just the reality. Fetterman needs a hug, a cup of warm milk, and a physical therapy. Yes. Fetterman needs to he should just go work for a candidate. You know, if he wants to be in politics, go work for a candidate, be a voice, or help them with their meme accounts, you know, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate every single one of you guys for joining me. It means so much to me that you joined me. I thank you so much for hanging out with me. Jesse Smith, 3 parties in Pennsylvania run against Oz. I like the guy, Ron Johnson, to write the constitutional panel. Awesome. Do it. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that's like, you should vote for who you like the most. Forget the RD or whatever. Vote for your most favorite candidate. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I appreciate every single one of you guys for joining me. Check out some of my videos. Check out my my shorts and stuff like that. We're going live again on Thursday, so look out for that. Tomorrow I hang out with the youth and serve underprivileged youth. Hang out with high school kids. So I hope you guys have a great day. I appreciate every single one of you guys. You guys are the most amazing people on the earth. Thank you for joining me. Hanging out with me means so much to me. It really does. I don't take it for granted. I appreciate every single one of you guys. We live in a crazy world. Crazy things are going on, and it's good to be around people who enjoy to be around one another and are okay with freedom of speech, okay with having different opinions, having different thoughts, and coming together and having a conversation, because we will only go forward as a country when we look at each other as human first and then learn about what your politics are or whatever. And also, the stream isn't only politics. We do a lot of other stuff, a lot with culture and stuff like that. We try to engage with all the top videos of the day and top news of the day, and we try to laugh our way through our pain. You know what I mean? So I hope you guys hang out with us if you're new here and all that good stuff. But I appreciate every single one of you guys. You guys are the best. Thank you. I will see you again as soon as possible. You guys are one of the best streams of since I've started. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Hug someone you love and let them know that the white pill is here and that hope is coming. And the future looks bright because we get to have these kind of shows and stuff like that. Have a good night. Love you guys. Bye.